FPS Win. Written by
嘟嘟雪球
This is the situation that Chen Chen least wants to see. He can accept being stopped and questioned when checking in or on the street. It is just a routine. However, if after you have successfully checked in, there are still people coming to your house, then it means that the other party must have a purpose. Although from an optimistic point of view, such purpose is not because one's identity and purpose have been exposed, but at least one thing is certain, that is, the other party is suspicious. Being suspected is the most troublesome and difficult situation to deal with. At this time, no matter what you say or whether the other party finds the flaw or not, you will be presumed guilty. It would be fine if it was a place with a sound legal system and reasonable law enforcement. But in a place like Ga, where warlords have absolute power and the presumption of guilt applies, how can you be okay? Chen Chen pressed himself against the wall and gestured to Ga, who hid his pistol behind him, walked to the door and asked, "Sir, what's the matter?" The voice coming from outside the door was extremely cold and hard. Routine ward rounds. Open the door. There was no room for negotiation. Chen Chen put down the Type 81 rifle in his hand, took the M1911 from Li Bang and put it back on his waist. Then he handed Ga a few US dollars. The amount was not large, only about 500. Open the door quickly. There was another urging voice outside the door, and Chen Chen nodded slightly. We can't wait any longer. If we wait any longer, they might really score. The white dog put on a smiling face and opened the door swiftly. 3 soldiers in green uniforms and holding rifles appeared in front of him. Sir, what's wrong? He happily handed over the bills, one to each person. The other party looked at the only $200 left in his hand and reached out to grab it. Then, the leader shouted angrily. Why did you take so long to open the door when I asked you to? Sir, we were just about to take a break, and we didn't even have any clothes on. No clothes on? You can't open the door without clothes on? Don't give me such excuses. Just get out of the way. As he spoke, the leader pushed the white dog away. Chen Chen stood behind him, pretending to be on guard. The leader's eyes swept over him and finally fell on the pistol at his waist. Bodyguard? What for? Do you need to bring a bodyguard here? These words left even Chen Chen speechless. What? I came here without a bodyguard. Do you really think this is a peaceful and prosperous time? However, he did not answer, but looked at the white dog beside him pretending to ask for help. Sir, he just invited people to help. They are all mercenaries from a legitimate mercenary group. You see, we all have identities. We all came from Meng Bin's side. If you weren't from Meng Bin, I wouldn't have checked on you. Why did you come all the way here? The leader spoke again, and from the information revealed in his words, Chen Chen smelled something unusual. If it wasn't Meng Bin, they wouldn't check. Could it be that the 505th Brigade had already been prepared for the 756th Brigade? Or was this just an exaggeration, and they were actually only checking all outsiders? There was no data networking in those days, and the only reason their information was leaked was by the hotel owner. The occurrence of this situation means that the control over foreign population is not just talk but has reached the level of strong enforcement. Something is not right. Chen Chen silently moved his hand away from the holster, which meant that his state of preparation had now officially changed from deterrence to killing. It is impossible to use guns here, but in a small area of 3 against 3, it is not impossible to win. At this time, Ga has begun to explain according to the preset identity information. We are here to buy people. Boss Lee, come over here, don't be afraid. Boss Lee runs a chicken shop in Mengbin City. Sir, as you know, things have been a bit unsettled there lately. Many places are deserted, and 2 people have died in the shop, so we thought we'd try our luck in Baudi. A chicken shop owner? The chicken shop owner doesn't go out to look for chickens, but comes here to live. Come with us. If you have anything to say, talk to the Public Security Brigade. As soon as he finished speaking, the leader stepped forward to pull the white dog. Chen Chen took a deep breath and made a decision in his heart. There is no way this matter today can be resolved peacefully. No matter what the other party's reason or purpose is for taking the 3 of us away, the mission will be declared over as long as we enter the Public Security Brigade. I never expected that the 505th Brigade would be so sensitive. There are at least 8,000 people transiting through Ga every day, and they actually dared to investigate like this. Or is it because the identity chosen by the party is too humble that it becomes the target of the other party? This is a dilemma. If you choose another identity, the background is too difficult to make and there are too many loopholes. Choosing this identity with a low reputation and being bullied for no reason. And now, even the money is useless. The more money you take out, the more suspicious the other party will be. We can only strike first. Chen Chen did not hesitate. He did not even give the white dog a signal. Instead, he immediately started to move at the moment when the leader dragged the white dog. The brigade has been training for nearly 10 years, and I'm also very familiar with close combat. His movements were unimpeded. He took a side step to bypass the leader in front, then rushed forward and punched immediately, hitting the unprotected, exposed Adam's apple of the soldier on the left. The opponent immediately lost his voice, but he kept moving, turning around and knocking down the other person with a low sweep. There was no fancy breaking the neck move, but he raised his right leg the moment he stood up and kicked the opponent's neck hard. With a click, the situation was reversed. At this time, Ga was not idle either. He had already controlled the opponent's arm holding the gun. With a standard gun-grabbing action in CQB, he took the gun from the opponent's hand with the help of the gun's lever arm. Li Bang stepped forward and pushed the man against the wall, covering his mouth and nose tightly. Chen Chen ignored them and pushed down the enemy, who was kneeling on the ground with an injured Adam's apple from behind, then exerted force with his knee and broke his cervical vertebrae. At this time, the leader was still struggling. Chen Chen didn't waste any words and went up to him and accurately pinched his carotid artery with his hand. In just a few seconds, the enemy's body went limp, but he did not hold back. His next move was to actually break his neck. From start to finish, it takes no more than 15 seconds. The three men immediately dragged all the bodies into the room and began to search them. There was nothing of value. What now? The white dog asked. Chen Chen hesitated for a few seconds and replied, there is no other way. The situation of the 505th Brigade is much more complicated than what we got from the intelligence. They're already shocked. It may be related to Jia's arrival in Mengbin. They may have guessed that there was such a small possibility that Jia would hook up with Yibangxiong, but it actually happened. I'm really impressed. Everyone pack your bags and prepare to cross the border. There's a cross-border route under the Friendship Bridge. Let's go straight over there. If you're really being targeted, just fight your way through. The bodies of the three people were difficult to deal with, so Chen Chen simply didn't deal with them. They locked the door directly, climbed down from the window, and headed directly towards the Friendship Bridge with all the equipment. In fact, although the area near the Friendship Bridge is a port, the security is generally very lax, to the extent that vehicles passing through are often not checked. But today, things are clearly different. The port and its surroundings were still in a loose state. But in the dark, Chen Chen saw at least 4 secret sentries keeping watch. Something is not right. Chen Chen spoke. The 505th Brigade's defenses are much stricter than we expected. They must have received some information or deduced some trend. This kind of defense cannot last too long. It should have started recently. I doubt that even if we succeed in crossing the border, we will not be able to get what we want. The other side must have deployed defensive forces in all possible positions. We will be dead if we go over there. If it doesn't work, retreat. Retreat? Stop fighting. Hearing Chen Chen's words, Bai Go couldn't help but be shocked. What the hell? The Dongfeng Corps, which is always victorious in every battle, would actually say the word retreat? Let's not fight anymore. The other side is well prepared. If we can't launch a surprise attack, we will be at a huge disadvantage. Bai Go nodded slightly, then looked at Chen Chen and asked, but if we withdraw now, what about Brigade 756? The 756th Brigade is your father, so you should give him whatever he wants. Now the situation has changed, which means the previous intelligence was wrong. Even if we withdraw now, it is not against the rules at all. Are we going to just go ahead and gamble with our lives? The white dog was stunned. What the team leader said seems to make a lot of sense. After all, the retreat was not caused by the mercenary group's own problems. No matter how hard it tried, the 756th Brigade would never cause trouble for the Dongfeng Corps. What about that woman? Didn't you say before that if we don't get the things, she will die too? To be honest, I wish she would die sooner. Chen Chen shook his head and continued, let's go retreat first. At least it's impossible to cross the border from the Friendship Bridge. We have to go around. We need to go around to Ban Phaphie, and then take the route from Ban Phaphie to Chiang Rai and enter Tachalike. Ban Phaphie is a small town on the Myanmar-Thailand border, 40 kilometers southeast of Tachalike. If they bypass this location, it means that the Dongfeng Corps will have to travel nearly 120 kilometers more, and all of it is mountain roads. Even though there is a direct route to Tachalike via the Babanyoding Expressway after crossing the border, they dare not take it. On the one hand, it is because of identity issues, and on the other hand, their cars are too conspicuous in a place like Thailand where order still exists. At that time, they are afraid that they will either have to walk or steal a car. No matter which solution is chosen, it is not particularly reliable. But Chen Chen couldn't care less now. The 505th Brigade had suffered casualties and would be discovered soon. Since they couldn't get through in a short time, they had to retreat outside Dakali first. So, without hesitation, he decisively took the other 2 people to evacuate. In any case, this infiltration operation was not fruitless. At least they obtained the most crucial information. That is, the 505th Brigade is prepared for possible reconnaissance or attacks, which means that the probability of the status of key evidence changing has greatly increased. Either the 505th Brigade has already obtained the evidence and is now just fishing, or they really haven't found it yet but want to wait for someone who can help them find it. The enemy is really strong. In fact, there is not a single warlord active in this land who is not strong. Their weakness lies only in their combat effectiveness in large-scale group operations, and this weakness in combat effectiveness is only caused by the poor quality of their personnel. When it comes to intrigue and conspiracy, they're really good at it. Now, the Dongfeng Corps has fallen into a completely passive situation. If it wants to break the impasse, it must find a way to confirm the level of detail of the intelligence held by the other side. But who should I look for? Sitting in the back seat of the Mitsubishi, Chen Chen couldn't help but frown. After a long while, he suddenly said, we need to catch someone and find out the truth. Catch who? The white dog asked subconsciously. Nuakong. Chen Chen answered without hesitation, and then added, to be precise, it is to arrest Nuakong's subordinates. As far as I know, Lien Ilai, a subordinate of Nakam, has been stationed in Dakali for a long time. He is the number 3 figure in the Nakam group and is very trusted by Nakam. He is also in charge of the procurement and trade of arms and equipment. This time, the equipment transaction between the 505th Brigade and Nakam was definitely facilitated through the one-piece suit. And this means that Lien Ilai has a very close relationship with the 505th Brigade. On issues that affect the interests of both parties, they will definitely share information, at least in the general direction. If we catch him, even if we can't get the specific action strategy and defense map of the 505th Brigade, we can get the basic situation of the intelligence exchange between the 2 sides and understand the granularity of the intelligence held by the 505th Brigade. As long as we get this information, we will know whether to fight or withdraw, and if we have to fight, how to fight. Can. Hearing Chen Chen's words, Bai Go responded immediately. Where is Lien Ilai's base? How is the defense situation? Chen Chen frowned and thought for a moment, trying to find a somewhat vague information from his memories. In the joint operation in the previous life, he did not directly participate in the arrest of Lien Eli, because the boy was not in Dakali at the time, but in a small village in Chiang Rai province. The Thai police adopted a covert operation plan and did a very thorough job of collecting intelligence in the early stages. In the end, they only sent a 6-member team from the Underwater Demolition Attack Force, which captured him from his home in the middle of the night and escorted him all the way to Bangkok. Therefore, the Thai side has actually done relatively limited disclosure of specific implementation details. They do not want to expose their informants, nor do they want to disclose the inappropriate means used in the so-called intelligence collection process. As a result, the information Chen Chen was exposed to was invisibly reduced. However, as his memories continued to deepen, a key piece of information appeared in Chen Chen's mind. That is, Lien Eli has a lover in Dakali, a lover whom he loved very much, in whom he invested a lot of money and energy, and even in the end it seemed that he fell into her hands. To find Lien E, you don't have to go to his base, but just wait near his lover's residence. Perfect plan. Now they were about to face pursuit from the 505th Brigade. Even if they launched a citywide manhunt, they would not be able to find Lien Eli. One action, two benefits. Chen Chen immediately said, "Turn around. No need to leave the city. Let the support team deliver the equipment to the Dawn Meditation Center in the northwest suburbs of Tachalike. We're going to Regina Casino Hotel. Our target lies next to the golf course near the hotel. We'll just lie in wait in the city. If Lien E shows up, we'll find a chance to break in. 10 o'clock at night." The 4-man combat team of Chen Chen, Li Bang, Bai Go, and Yang Shu was lurking in the woods about 600 meters away from the Regina golf course, carefully observing the movements in the distance. The bodies of the 3 soldiers from the 505th Brigade who were killed by them during the day have been found, and as Chen Chen expected, Dakali has entered a citywide manhunt mode. The Public Security Brigade, under the 505th Brigade, launched attacks everywhere. Almost all hotels, chicken shops, and other places of stay were searched. Checkpoints were also set up on several main roads in and out of Dakali, and all vehicles passing through were subject to inspection. The city was in chaos. But in contrast to the chaos was the almost silent calm near the golf course. It is the real wealthy area in the entire Dakali, and it is also a piece of paradise that was forcibly carved out from hell. No matter how chaotic the outside world is, bullets will not fly over its head, and the corpses that may appear on the streets at any time will not pollute the carefully maintained artificial lake. This is a huge irony, as far as Chen Chen knows. At this time in 2009, there was news that Dakali was short of water due to water pollution, but the rulers here used a large amount of clean water to irrigate the useless golf course turf. Its daily water consumption alone is enough to meet the daily water needs of more than 1/10 of the residents. A place where money and force are supreme is so unreasonable. However, Chen Chen couldn't care less now. He stared at the actions of several security guards in the golf course through the telescope, and then whispered to the other 3 people. Currently, a total of 6 sentry posts have been found, with a total of 12 people, extending along the fence on the west side of the golf course, all using automatic rifles. There are 2 more hidden guards located in the wooded hazards on both sides of the center fairway. I can see blurry shadows, but I can't tell what weapons they are holding. I guess they are sniper rifles because I noticed the reflection just now. In addition, there are 2 4-member mobile patrol teams that patrol in a zigzag pattern. These outposts basically block all our routes of entry from the west. If we want to launch a ground attack, we must at least destroy 1 outpost and 1 mobile group. But the problem is that we probably can't use firearms because once the gun goes off, everyone will be alert and the subsequent attack on the target villa will be declared a failure. We must sneak in silently, get close to the villa, eliminate the security guards in the villa, and then control the target. We can only dive in from the river on the northwest side of the stadium, but we're not sure if there are any nets set up underwater. Damn, it would be great if Jackal was here. He's a professional at this kind of underwater work. At this point, Chen Chen couldn't help but sigh, and the white dog beside him added. The other side has a lot of manpower, but the deployment of the security force is not professional. Among them, the Visible Sentry Group 1 is completely isolated from the other 5 Visible Sentry Groups, the Aircraft Patrol Groups 1 and 2, and the Hidden Sentry Group. There are blind spots between them. Judging from the other side's patrol trajectory, we have at least a 6-minute window for each round of patrol. As long as we can kill all the Sentry Group 1 and the Aircraft Patrol Group 1 within these 6 minutes, and then detour to the southeast, there will be enough time for us to advance to the villa area. As long as we get to the villa area, we can let loose, rush in, shoot, capture people, and leave. We can take out all the security at the golf course. Given the current chaos, it will take at least 10 minutes for the Public Security Brigade to react, which is plenty of time for both the response and the evacuation. Tonight is a great opportunity, maybe even the best opportunity. Captain, do you want to give it a try? Hearing his words, Chen Chen couldn't help but frown. That's right, in terms of timing, tonight is indeed the weakest defense and easiest to break through point near the Regina Hotel. The problem was that they didn't have enough noise suppression equipment. It is impossible to achieve the ideal killing effect by relying solely on a CS/LS2 because they have to kill a full 6 people simultaneously. They must be killed at once before these 8 people react and before they fire warning shots. There are only 4 people on our side, one of whom is a sniper who is relatively inexperienced in close combat. It's difficult. He raised the telescope again, trying to find additional flaws. Just at this moment, when his eyes swept across the villa, something unexpected happened. 2 figures appeared beside the swimming pool on the rooftop of the villa. One of them is Lien Eli, and the other is obviously his lover. The 2 of them waved their arms and seemed to be arguing. Immediately afterwards, a bodyguard came out of the villa grabbing a woman's hair, took the gun from the other person, and handed it to the lover. A few seconds later, the lover aimed at the kneeling woman and pulled the trigger. Bang! The loud gunshot could be heard clearly even from where Chen Chen was. The woman who was shot kept struggling on the ground. She had been shot in the neck, and the bullet appeared to have gone through her throat, but not directly into an artery. Blood rushed into her respiratory tract, causing her to twitch involuntarily in the pain of suffocation. But neither Lien Eli nor his lover looked at the woman on the ground again. They just continued to quarrel. Fuck, is this the main wife fighting the secondary wife? The white dog asked in a low voice. I don't know what it looks like. Chen Chen answered casually, his eyes quickly scanning the entire golf course. He inexplicably had a hunch that this unexpected incident would become their opportunity to attack. And that is exactly the case. Air Patrol Group 1 turned and headed towards the villa. Chen Chen's spirits were lifted, and he immediately gave the order. Everyone move quickly. Put on your night vision goggles and turn off all light sources. We will enter from the West River Channel, kill the first group of sentries, and then advance towards the villa. Yangshu, after we get in, you will provide cover and support at the river. If our whereabouts are exposed, prioritize destroying high-value targets to draw fire for us. Clear. Everyone responded in unison, stood up immediately, and rushed towards the golf course. At this time, Lien Eli was still immersed in the quarrel with her lover and did not bother to pay attention to the security personnel who rushed over to check the situation. Of course, he also didn't know that there was a hunting team that was sneaking towards him. The foursome moved forward all the way, and after coming out of the woods and down the hillside, they quickly moved along the street in front of the Tachalike Central Hospital towards the golf course. In fact, the location of this golf course is already on the edge of the main urban area of Dakali, or in other words, it is in a typical wealthy area of a city. So, they encountered almost no obstacles and did not bump into any passersby who were doing nothing on the road. At 10:15, 5 minutes after Lien Eli had an argument with his lover and Air Patrol Group 1 was transferred away, the four of them crossed a distance of 600 meters and arrived at the designated entry point. This is a river that runs through the golf course and is actually a tributary specifically diverted from the Rock River. Chen Chen carefully observed the movements of the Inter-Sentry Group 1 through the barbed wire, and then, with the help of the bushes, he took Li Bang and by go into the water, while Yangshu stayed outside to observe secretly. In the silent night, the sound of splashing water was somewhat obvious, but when the other party looked over here, he only saw the calm water surface. A few seconds later, Chen Chen's earphones heard a crackling sound of electricity. That was the signal sent by Yangshu. They began to grope forward underwater in the dark. The only thing they could use as a reference was a fluorescent strip marking that reflected a faint glow. They were very lucky. Perhaps due to negligence, or perhaps to ensure smooth water flow, there was really no blockade set up in this river channel. They successfully reached the inside of the golf course, and judging from the changes in the terrain beneath their feet, the river had become noticeably shallower. Standing up slightly, Chen Chen's head emerged from the water. At this time, all the sentries of Mingxiao Group 1 had their backs to him. He did not launch an attack immediately, but slowly moved his body, waiting for all the water droplets on his head to slide off, and then slowly extended his shoulders. This can minimize the noise when exiting the water. It turns out that this detail, which does not appear often in stealth operations, is indeed very effective. The first group of sentries were concentrating on observing the movements ahead, and were completely unaware that someone had already come around from the water and was behind them. Getting out of the water and onto the shore, this action, which only takes a few seconds in the swimming pool, took Chen Chen and the other two a full 3 minutes. And when their feet touch solid ground, everything will be over. Chen Chen made a gesture and simply assigned tasks to the other two. Li Bang and Bai Go were responsible for the two people on both sides respectively, while he was responsible for the two people in the middle. The dagger has been unsheathed. This is an extreme force Pugio fighting dagger. The total length of the blade is 223 millimeters. The blade length is 107 millimeters. It adopts a double-edged design and a spear-shaped blade, which brings the stabbing performance to the extreme. This knife does not have the serrated design commonly seen on various military knives. The blade design is extremely smooth, and its highlight is its speed. It penetrates quickly and is pulled out quickly. In some tests, it even takes several seconds for blood to gush out after it penetrates the prey's body. This is exactly the kind of speed Chen Chen wanted. He didn't have time to slowly torture his enemies to death with the irregular blade of the knife. He had only one goal, which was to cut off the enemy's throat and aorta, making them instantly incapacitated. The handle with an inner arc design and polymer coating is very suitable for firm grip. Even though Chen Chen's hands were full of water at this time, he did not feel any slippage. Everyone held their breath. At this moment, the hunter was only 10 meters away from his prey. An idea suddenly popped up in Chen Chen's mind. Maybe he would be more adept at doing this kind of thing? After all, he was a man who had followed his brother in hunting wild boars with a knife. If he could kill wild boars with a little training, it would probably be even easier to kill people, right? Chen Chen exhaled lightly, and the distance was shortened to 5 meters. This is the final assault distance. If we continue forward, the probability of being discovered will increase to almost 100%. Raise your left hand and then make a fist. The three rushed out and rushed towards their own targets. Chen Chen's first target was still the enemy on the right. This had nothing to do with his so-called personal habits. It was just because after killing the enemy on the right, the enemy on the left would inevitably turn around, and at this time he could take advantage of the right-hand knife and launch continuous attacks without having to adjust the angle of direction. His steps were heavy, but the enemy hadn't noticed yet. Just half a second later, the enemies on both sides were knocked down, and the Pugio in Chen Chen's hand was already on the neck of the enemy on the right. He stuffed his left hand directly into the other person's open mouth, and in a weird but effective way pressed down the root of his tongue, making it impossible for him to make any sound. This was much more effective than simply covering his mouth. Then, the sharp blade pierced into the opponent's throat like cutting tofu, and then in the critical half-second, cut his entire neck. In many of the violent and terrorist videos that have been circulated, cutting the throat is shown to be very difficult, requiring a knife to be repeatedly sharpened. But that is just the fear deliberately created by inhuman terrorists. In fact, at the moment the knife is stabbed down and pulled away, you're almost unaware of what you have done. You will only feel the other person's head inexplicably tilted back. And this will be the last time the enemy raises his head in his life. Chen Chen's movements did not pause at all. After pulling out the dagger, he stretched out his arm and stabbed the enemy on the left who had just turned around with a long-range attack. The tip of the knife pierced into the throat. Chen Chen moved forward and pinned down the opponent's gunman. In fact, this is no longer necessary because the moment the cold blade pierces the body, these security personnel who have not received real special operations training are completely controlled by instinct and lose the ability to resist. 2 assassinations completed in 2 seconds. This is the advantage of a backhand knife with the tip of the blade facing forward. In fact, there is a classic old rumor about this, which says that criminals like to hold the knife with the tip of the knife facing forward for easier stabbing, while special forces like to hold the knife with the tip of the knife facing downward for easier cutting, and various explanations have been made up. But in fact, Chen Chen has not seen any forehand-based killing tutorials in any country's textbooks. Even in the classic dagger exercises, the forehand knife-holding action at the end is called capturing knife method rather than killing enemy knife method. Of course, putting all this aside, as a special forces soldier, the most common scenarios for you to use a knife are to scrape magnesium rods, sharpen chopsticks, and cut your own sausage when making a fire and cooking in the wild, and to stab the enemy from behind during sneak operations. You're holding a knife. How can you cut my throat? In any case, the Dongfeng Corps trio won a great victory in this knife fight. Chen Chen has indeed regained a lot of his senses, and even this kind of movement that requires strong muscle memory can be completed smoothly. After he killed 2 enemies, Li Bang and Bai Go also killed 2 more. The White Dog's movements were equally smooth, but Li Bang's were much more violent. He was not good at using the knife, so he directly hit the man's back of the head with the butt of his rifle, knocking off a piece of his skull, and he fell to the ground on the spot. You know what? It was exactly the method that Chen Chen had taught him before. The 3 of them simply dragged the body to a hidden place, and then circled along the edge of the golf course green, bypassing the line of sight of the secret sentry, and almost brushed the edge of the patrol range of the 2nd Patrol Group, and rushed to the outskirts of the target villa. At this time, a group of air patrol officers had just arrived and were awkwardly, but politely asking the villa's internal security about the situation. The trio wasn't spotted as everyone was busy eating melons. The gun in the lover's hand made a sound from time to time, and it was unclear whether it was shooting at the woman on the ground or at some unknown place. There are at least 8 people. Currently, 4 of them are wearing heavy bulletproof vests. They should be the bodyguards who came with them. All other security guards have no bulletproof vests, but Air Patrol Group 1 has level 2 bulletproof vests. Deal with the bodyguards first, then the patrol team, and security last. There is no information in the room, typing blindly. Number 1, prepare the smoke bombs and throw them full. Yang Shu, set up your gun and keep an eye on Lian Ilai. Don't let him escape from the periphery. If you can't make it, shoot him dead. White Dog, stun bomb, then follow me to charge. Receive. Everyone answered in a low voice, and then Yang Shu reported again in the headset. I saw the villa's electrical box on the lawn. We can fire a shot synchronously to see if the power can be cut off. Agree. Follow my instructions. Chen Chen answered briefly, then stretched out his hand and counted down. 3, 2, 1. Chen Chen clenched his fists suddenly and fired the stun bomb that he had prepared long ago. Then, Li Bang fired a smoke bomb, and Yang Shu fired a shot that hit the electrical box. With a bang, sparks came out of the electrical box and half of the lights in the villa went out, but the power was not completely cut off. But this is not important. It is just the icing on the cake. All thermal imagers were switched to infrared mode. This was actually the reason why Chen Chen only brought 4 people, because he only had 4 4-eye night vision goggles. Immediately afterwards, Chen Chen and Bai Go jumped out, pointing their guns at the 4 bodyguards who were stunned by the stun grenades. The huge noise, flash, and the ensuing smoke completely confused the enemies. Chen Chen killed 2 of them with 2 short headshots. Bai Go knocked down 1 person. The last person curled up on the ground and was shot dead after the distance was shortened. The heavy bulletproof vest didn't work at all. At a combat distance of 50 meters, with the complete advantage of projectiles providing sufficient aiming time, what could the bulletproof vest block? Showing your head means death. In comparison, the 2nd Patrol Group was even more vulnerable. They didn't even have bulletproof vests. The only one who was still standing was shot into a sieve, and the other 3 were shot one by one. Li Bang had no intention of stopping throwing smoke bombs. He first used 2 smoke bombs to block the front of the villa, completely isolating the villa from other peripheral security, and then began throwing smoke bombs into the room. Thick smoke billowed. Within a dozen seconds, he had thrown 6 smoke bombs, all of which hit the designated locations. Number 1. Follow the charge. Chen Chen issued the second order, and then Li Bang immediately picked up his gun and rushed forward quickly, walked behind Chen Chen, who was standing at the door, and tapped him on the shoulder to signal him to take position. This time, the door of the villa was closed, but Chen Chen was prepared. The unused C4 he got from the jackal came in handy. With a loud bang, the door collapsed. Chen Chen threw a stun grenade into the house, then quickly cut the corner and scanned the simple corner. The enemy in the dangerous corner on the right was knocked down by Chen Chen's continuous shooting, and the one on the left was knocked down by the White Dog. In fact, Bai Go has not undergone systematic CQB training, but the keenness trained on the battlefield still enables him to make the right choice at the first time. After achieving control of the simple corner, Chen Chen rushed in without hesitation. The reception hall on the first floor was extremely empty, and there was almost no cover. The dangerous corners on the left and right sides are controlled by Chen Chen and by Go respectively, and there are no enemies there. Li Bang performed his task faithfully. After throwing a stun bomb above the spiral staircase, he continued to throw the second to last smoke bomb. At this moment, the entire villa was filled with smoke, and the voice of observer Yang Shu came from Chen Chen's headphones. The target has entered the villa, in the room on the far right of the corridor on the second floor. I have lost sight of him. Clear. You have to be quick. Otherwise it will be troublesome if he runs away. The trio sped up again and rushed all the way up the spiral staircase. Li Bang, wearing full interceptor armor, was at the front. He was shot twice just as he stepped onto the stairs, but he did not retreat. Instead, he immediately half-crouched and opened fire to suppress the enemy. Chen Chen fired from his side, knocking down the two red enemies on the opposite side, while the white dog stood guard at the rear and suppressed an enemy who stretched his hand out of the room and fired into the corridor. Number 1. Shotgun. Li Bang threw the last smoke bomb into the corridor behind him, then immediately dropped his gun and switched to A-12, firing intermittently at the door where the enemy was. After 3 shots, the enemy who reached out again suffered a great loss. His wrist had just been exposed when Li Bang's shotgun blasted it into pieces. True fragments. Chen Chen was still in charge of guarding the front corridor, while Bai Go followed Li Bang and began to clean up the rear corridor. Let's go. The white dog patted Chen Chen on the back, and Chen Chen quickly changed the bullets, then retreated in the direction of Li Bang and the other two without changing the direction of the gun. There were continuous gunshots. The enemy with a broken hand in the first room was shot again, followed by another enemy opposite him. Li Bang heard the man's movements in the room, so he fired directly at the door. A FRAG. 12 high explosive bomb penetrated the wooden door and knocked the man to the ground. Safety. Safety. Li Bang and Bai Go sent their confirmations one by one, while Chen Chen added a smoke bomb to the staircase and the opposite corridor. The view has been 100% blocked. Maybe there are security guards on the 3rd floor, but no one dares to rush down, because the strength displayed by the trio was too strong and their firepower was too fierce. Smoke bombs, stun bombs, shotguns, and long-range snipers. What fucking country is this special forces from? Are they here to capture uniformed soldiers? The 505th Brigade doesn't have this ability, and the Thais are unwilling to intervene. The only one who can do this is a terrifying name that flashed through everyone's mind. At this moment, they don't want to resist. Run the hell away. Stop fighting. If you really kill their people, that would be the end of your life. There was no more resistance in the villa, and the trio successfully came to the room where Lien Eli was hiding. Then, the shotgun broke the door and the stun grenade cleared the way. Chen Chen stepped into the room and knocked down Lien Eli, who was lying on the ground in a daze, with the butt of his gun. Then he pulled out the FN-57 and shot the woman who had just been arguing with Lien Eli. She was once the most favored Dakali socialite, and her network was even so powerful that she could influence the brigade commander Zhao Jiaoyang through other canaries. But she died just like that, without any warning and without any mercy. This is the fate of prey. No one talks to their prey. Chen Chen grabbed the thin jumpsuit and threw it on Li Bang's back, then immediately ordered, retreat. Yang Shu, stop the enemy and open up a retreat route for us. Yang Shu got it. There's a car at the side door of the villa. It's in startup mode. You can leave immediately. Needless to say, the trio immediately went downstairs and got into the car smoothly. At this time, only 2 minutes and 40 seconds had passed since the first gunshot. The nearest Air Patrol Group 2 and Sentry Group 1 have arrived near the villa. There are 8 of them, and their firepower is becoming intensive. Yang Shu, suppress fire. I'm being suppressed by the secret sentry. The other side has a sniper. Fuck, where's your fuel air bomb? What are you doing there? Chen Chen cursed angrily, and Yang Shu fell silent. A few seconds later, a violent explosion was heard. The fuel air bomb burned the entire forest, and all living things were reduced to ashes. Sniper fight in the middle? Bullshit. I'll blow you to pieces. After the fuel air bomb exploded, retreat became extremely easy. Everyone saw the horrific scene, and even the attempts to intercept the enemy became timid because they were afraid. They were afraid that the next shell would fall on their heads. All fear comes from insufficient firepower, but conversely, sufficient firepower will also bring great fear to the enemy. Chen Chen is not actually a believer in the theory of superior firepower, but he believes that firepower is definitely the most convenient and quickest means to increase the advantage in a short period of time. Therefore, when formulating the action plan, he gave Yang Shu a strengthening buff without hesitation. The reason why he did not let him follow in and instead let him stay on the periphery to provide cover, in addition to the necessary role of observer, was because he was carrying so much equipment that he really couldn't go into the water. The stolen bulletproof land cruiser rushed all the way, and the 3 men drove to the edge of the golf course within a minute. Then they used the C4 to blast through the fence of the golf course, got out of the car, and ran away. It only took them 1 minute to walk the 300-meter distance from the golf course to the outside of Tachalike Hospital. Then, the 4 of them turned onto a small path and headed towards the Dawn Sanatorium in the mountains west of Dakali, where the reception team was located. After leaving the city's main road, the pickup team arrived in a Marauder. Opening and closing the door were no problem. The Marauder drove along the small road towards Bampapi. On the only road, Chen Chen considerately dropped 2 broadsword mines. This thing doesn't cause obvious damage to the vehicle, but it's more than enough to blow up a rubber pneumatic tire. However, their speed was too fast. After they had completely entered the mountain and escaped from the core danger circle, the first broadsword sounded belatedly. It's impossible to catch up. Although this place is not a deep mountain forest like Wanpangsang, the roads are extremely complicated, with country roads everywhere for crossing borders and routing. Even if the 505th Brigade wanted to chase them, they would not be able to do so for a while. When they arrived at the camping spot selected by Chen Chen in advance, Lien Eli, who was tied up tightly, finally woke up. After being dragged out of the car, he did not shout or resist, but asked very calmly, "Are you still a friend from the north?" He was asking about the north, but in English. Chen Chen shook his head and replied, "Don't worry about that. You just need to answer my questions. We all know your life is valuable, but it's not that valuable. So, I will only ask a few questions, and they will only be within your value. From now on, cooperate well, and we will live in peace. If you don't want to cooperate, then we can just part ways and I will go and catch someone else." "Catch someone else?" Lien Eli repeated it subconsciously, and then said with a smile, "Who else can you arrest? Apart from me, no one else will be active in the outside world. Do you want to arrest Kong? Or do you want to arrest Kong? You have to find them first. So, I am your only choice and your only bargaining chip. Of course, I won't resist, but I will assess the value of what you want. Why don't we just treat this as a deal?" Lien Eli is very confident and calm. He witnessed with his own eyes the ruthless way in which this man killed his lover. It was truly ruthless because he did not have any hesitation or thought process, but at the same time, he absolutely did not show any signs of bloodlust or cruelty. This is different from the type of people he is familiar with. Even Nong Cam, his so-called decisive killing, is caused by his brutal character. But the man in front of me was just calm. This is why the first thing he asked was the North, because in his opinion, only those people could achieve this level. However, this is actually a good thing for me. Because the calmer a person is, the better he is at doing business. What good would it do for them to kill themselves here? Kong would soon find a new person to take over the business he controlled, and everything would go back to square one. Only getting enough value would be truly beneficial to them. So he raised his head and looked at the man opposite him with a smile. But soon his smile froze on his face. Because of what the other person said. Vasana, Zen Temple. Lien Eli widened her eyes and said nothing. 3 blessings. Vampiasi 20.589, 100.277. A small pastoral village. Also, the Huidong Steel office will be posted. Well, do you want me to continue? Lien Eli had already collapsed on the ground. At this moment, he suddenly felt that what was happening before his eyes was extremely magical. All the locations just mentioned by this man are Kong's hiding places. There is even a camp located deep in the jungle of Vampiasi. How did he know? No, if he already knew all this, why did he come to arrest me? Damn it, if you want to kill Kong, can't you just go find him? Lien Eli was silent for a long time and finally asked, "What do you want? Do you want another hiding place? It's impossible to find it even in Vampiasi, so it's impossible for you to find it somewhere else. You guys want to change people? Or do you want to start a war?" This is the most terrifying possibility Lien Eli could think of. If even Nakam was not their target, then their only target would be the warlords active here. In fact, he did guess right. Chen Chen's target was indeed the 505th Brigade, but he certainly wasn't here to collect intelligence on behalf of the North like Lien Eli was. He wasn't trying to provoke the kind of recovery war that Lien Eli thought it was, but just a small war among warlords. Of course, Chen Chen wouldn't answer his question. He just continued. "You answer whatever I ask. Don't ask any more questions. It won't do you any good. Do you understand? I'm not going to answer that." Lien Eli slumped on the ground and said with despair on his face, "No matter what I say, I will die. Do you think I don't understand? How can I get involved in such a big thing? I'm just a small dealer. I really don't want to have any conflict with you. I don't even sell drugs. I just do some arms dealing. I admit that I sold some things you don't allow, but I really didn't mean to do it. That was all Nakam's idea. We just wanted to teach Laos a lesson. Who knew those things were new? I have no choice but to hand it over to this side. I just want to survive. What have I done wrong? Please, if you want to kill me, just give me a quick death. Don't ask me. You really don't need me to say anything." His reaction made Chen Chen a little overwhelmed. "If you deny it on the spot, you will abandon the advantage you have already built up, which will make the subsequent interrogation more difficult. There's no denying it. He might really stick to it. He's going to die anyway, and he might as well live longer. As long as time goes on, he'll have a chance." Chen Chen frowned and thought for a moment, and finally asked directly, "The evidence of the 505th Brigade's transaction with you has been destroyed by you, but you didn't catch the female reporter. Where is she now?" This was a very typical phishing-style question. The information Chen Chen really wanted was hidden in the first half. As long as the other party opened his mouth, no matter what he answered, he could judge the answer. What surprised him was that Lien Eli's psychological defenses were already broken. He didn't even think too much and answered directly, "I don't know. She ran away a long time ago. How could I know? But you wanted to catch her, and you set up a lot of traps near several locations, including the Love Hotel. This shows that you were clear about her movements. Otherwise, how could you spend so much money? If you don't know where she is, you should at least know who she's allied with, right?" "Of course not. That's just a precaution. We don't know if she will come. We don't even know if she is still alive." Lien Eli sighed. He guessed why Chen Chen wanted to ask about the whereabouts of the female reporter. This is indeed an important chess piece, no matter which side it is. I do know the information he wants, but there is absolutely no way I can tell him. Thinking of this, he continued, "I told you, there's no need to ask this kind of question. Compared to her, Kong is more important evidence. If you catch Kong and give him a chance to live, why wouldn't he say anything? Or you can take me to the north and ask me then, and I will tell you. Here, I will not answer any of your questions because there are no laws and no rules. This is really ironic. A drug lord who never follows the rules and cannot survive under the legal environment of any country actually tried to use the law to protect himself. It must be said that Lien Eli had a very clear mind. Even in this desperate situation, He was still struggling to grasp the glimmer of hope for survival. But he didn't know that during this interrogation that seemed to have not yet officially begun, Chen Chen had already obtained the most important information he wanted. The evidence has been destroyed, and the enemy is just fishing. But why do they fish? This doesn't make sense. It is impossible for Jia to go back to get evidence again, so there is little point in setting up a trap to kill her. Because the evidence has been destroyed, there is no evidence to support. The claim and the threat has disappeared. Even if you want to kill, there is no need for so much preparation. So, who are they fishing for? It could only be He Bangxiong. He Bangxiong wanted to use Jia to gain an advantage. And Zhao Jiayang also wanted to use He Bangxiong's mistakes to gain an advantage. Chen Chen didn't need to worry about how to achieve it specifically. It was too complicated. Now he had only one question: how to get new evidence when the evidence was gone. Or was there any other way to disrupt the compromise between the 505th Brigade and the Burmese? The answer was simple. If there is no evidence, create evidence. He looked at Lien Eli, who was kneeling on the ground again, and asked, how is the defense of the drug factory in Dakali by the 505th Brigade? Are you responsible, or are they responsible for it themselves? There is no such thing as Dakali. Wait. Lien Eli finally realized that Chen Chen had been deceiving him from the beginning to the end. Damn! He raised his head angrily, but when he saw the FN-57 in Chen Chen's hand that did not tremble at all, his momentum instantly weakened. I won't say another word. Really not. Chen Chen confirmed again. I can't tell you. Clear. Chen Chen didn't waste any more time talking to him. He was not particularly good at getting someone to talk through torture in a short period of time. But not being good at it doesn't mean you can't. He could still try. Chen Chen pulled out the Pugio, cut open the pants of the jumpsuit, and then put the blade against his thigh. Without any nonsense, he directly cut off a piece of flesh. Lien Eli's scream was blocked in his throat by Go's hand. At this moment, he did feel a little regretful. Maybe I really shouldn't have taken this path. But if he didn't leave, how could he survive? Chen Chen ignored his struggle and ordered the remaining 2 people to hold him down, then said, I don't know how many people have been harmed by the drugs sold by your gang. If we calculate based on absolute numbers, and if we cut 1 knife per person, there might not even be enough flesh on your body to cut. But it doesn't matter, you're just number 3, so just share the burden a little. I'll go get the rest from Nuakong. Well, how long do you think you can last? Lien Eli didn't say anything, just struggled. Chen Chen said calmly, give him a shot of adrenaline first. Li Bang did as he was told immediately. Lien Eli's eyes were vicious and his teeth were even bleeding. Chen Chen's cutting movements were very steady. To be honest, it was an extremely unpleasant and disgusting operation. But he had no other choice. Fortunately, what Lien Eli did was completely worthy of such punishment, which made him feel relieved. Otherwise, he might not be able to hold on. However, he could hold on, but Lien Eli couldn't. He only lasted 12 cuts before he struggled frantically and uttered, I said. Chen Chen wiped the blood off his hands and asked, are you sure you want to tell me? I'm sure. Lien Eli nodded vigorously. I can see that you just want the 505th Brigade to die. Fuck you guys, you're so cruel. The 505th Brigade just wants autonomy. You have to kill them. It's okay, I won't play anymore. If you want to know anything, I can tell you. Pay it in installments. I'll tell you something useful first, and after the extradition, I'll tell you something more useful. Don't worry. Don't rush at this moment. Leave me 3 days. Just 3 days. I will prove that I am useful. You want evidence, right? There is evidence. There is a Jianglong assault boat on the Meisai River, and it has what you want. Don't kill me now. Take me to the border, and I'll tell you what's on it, and I'll also tell you how to take that ship. No need to use any force. Trust me. Lien Eli's tone was very urgent, and he finally gave up. He originally wanted to challenge the bottom line of these Northerners, because Northerners always abide by the rules. But unfortunately, the ones he met today were not them. Lingxi, how can a person who follows the rules do such a thing? Stop it. Let's stay alive first. At least we have to meet someone who really follows the rules first. Hearing his words, Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief without making a sound. Just let it go. The other party really misjudged his identity, so he probably really thought that I would let him live and let him attend a public trial or something like that. But this was just a ridiculous miscalculation. What's on board? A lot of marijuana. Passes. A radio to contact the 505th Brigade. They will leave in a day. This is the deadline. The 505th Brigade will clear out all of their own drug factories in a few hours. They will move all of them to Changsane. They've been shocked too. They predicted your actions. This is your last chance. You are too late. Only I can help you get the evidence. Where is the location? Lock Wharf. It's heavily guarded. Even if you get in, you can't get out. Lien Eli's voice had begun to tremble, but under the effect of a large dose of adrenaline, he remained conscious. Then how did you get in? Why would the 505th Brigade trust you? I'll tell you when we get to the border. It takes at most 8 hours to get to the border from here. There's still time, Lien Eli said through gritted teeth. Now tell me. I'll keep you alive until you get to the border. You wouldn't have died so soon anyway. No, I won't tell you. Of course the North doesn't want me to die so soon, but you think. You are not from the army at all. You are from the National Security Bureau. I've seen your methods, you. Bang! The pointed bullet of the FN-57 pierced through Lien Eli's brain, and he didn't even finish his last sentence. There's no need to waste time. The more he guessed about his identity, the more outrageous it became. And this also means that it is really impossible for him to spit out more. Kill and withdraw. Then find that boat and sail it away. What? Can't get away? Are you kidding me? That's the Jianglong 15-meter class armed assault law enforcement boat. Although it has the name law enforcement, the hull and weapon system are all made with reference to the CB-90 used by the American Riverine troops. This is a mysterious and rewarding job at a domestic shipyard, and it is not something that can be told to outsiders. As long as you sit on it, you can definitely run. Even if a helicopter comes, it can still knock you down. Because the weapon on this ship is not a machine gun, nor a mortar, but a Type 85 23mm small caliber double-barrel anti-aircraft gun. Yes, the kind that can fire horizontally. To attack Lock Wharf, for people alone are definitely not enough. We need sufficient heavy firepower. Everyone needs to go into Dakali. 9 people will go with the car, and 1 person will be responsible for driving the car back. Drive to Wangnanfu Pass near Jingdong, which is the farthest distance that the Mekong River tributaries can reach. It also happens to be in the territory of the Myanmar army. As long as we get there, we will be basically safe. If necessary, we can also retreat by car. Under the light, Chen Chen looked at the map on the ground and spoke. The white dog beside him nodded thoughtfully, then asked, "Are we really going to sail directly from Lok Pier? If we take the Mekong River, the journey is too long. We have to walk 50 kilometers along the Luoka River to the Golden Triangle Park, then go north for 160 kilometers to the Mungla Wharf in Wangpalankio, and then drive nearly 100 kilometers west from Wangpalankio to Wangnanfu. The whole journey is over 300 kilometers. What is the top speed of the ship? About 75 kilometers. Chen Chen answered, but quickly added, "But this is the speed that can be achieved under the most perfect conditions. According to the current hydrological conditions of the Mekong River, we are lucky to be able to reach a speed of 50 kilometers per hour. But it's okay to go slower. Like you said, the section from Rock River to Golden Triangle Park is the most dangerous, but the hydrological conditions are the best, so we can just rush through it. The last section is completely deep in the mountains and forests. No ground vehicle can keep up. It is easy and simple. The most difficult part is the 160-kilometer section in the middle. We have to pass through Nakam's lair and may be intercepted by the Laotian side. There is a road on the east side of the river. Only if we can get to the north of Sanfu can we shake off the pursuit from Laos. It's really not easy, but we have 2 choices now. Either give up the mission or go and rob the ship. How about the 3 of us vote?" The other team members did not have the right to vote. Li Bang, of course, supported Chen Chen without hesitation. After a little thought, Bai Go said, "We can do it, but Brigade 756 will have to pay more. $500,000 is too little compared to the risk of this mission. Of course, if it were an ordinary cannon fodder group, the price would be about the same. But we are here to complete the mission, so the price is definitely not this. We need to talk to He Bongxiong about the extra money. If there really is something on the ship, that would be strong evidence, and he would definitely be willing to pay more. But instead of asking for more money, I'd rather ask them to send people." Chen Chen paused for a moment before continuing. "After we arrive at Wangnanfu, we will need someone to pick us up and take the boat back to Mengbin or Mengka. Although the last section can be taken by water, the hydrological conditions are too poor, so we can only scrape by and need someone to escort us. I think it's better to let them do this than to ask for money. Anyway, since we can seize this ship, it's really not about money. Safety is the most important thing." "Clear." The white dog nodded immediately, and then added, "Wangnanfu is in the defense zone of the Myanmar army in Jingdong. It is not easy for He Bongxiong to come here. So what should we do?" "That's it." Chen Chen made the decision, and everyone no longer had any questions. All the weapons and equipment on the plunderer were cleared away, leaving only an empty vehicle to return. The remaining few people took all their equipment and began to advance towards Dakali in the dark. This was a very simple psychological tactic. From the enemy's point of view, they had done enough big things in this day. First, they killed people in the hotel, then turned the Regina golf course upside down, took away the third-rank figure of the Nakam group, and fled into the mountains in the west. No matter from which angle you look at it, they shouldn't fight back. But Chen Chen really planned to do so. What else are we waiting for? Waiting for the other side to react and strengthen our defense? Or waiting for them to drive the ship away, and then we can just stare at the empty dock? If the weak want to defeat the strong, they must catch them by surprise and cut the Gordian knot dead. But of course, if you want to launch such an offensive, timing is very important. It was already 11 o'clock at night, and they were more than 20 kilometers away from Dakali. The looters were no longer available, and rushing there on foot was simply a joke, so their only way was to cross the border from Ban Phaphai to Chiang Rai province in Thailand as originally planned, and then steal a car and drive along the small road near Ban Phaphai all the way to Tachalike. This is probably a different approach to the same end. The original backup plan was finally put into use. The 9 fully loaded people carried enough ammunition and started hiking. They were now less than 1 kilometer away from Ban Phaphai. According to Chen Chen's memory, it should be a tea-producing town. If they were lucky, they could get a car directly. Unfortunately, their luck was really bad. After more than 10 minutes of trekking, when they arrived at Ban Phaphai, Chen Chen discovered that his memory was distorted. Yes, this is indeed a tea-producing area, but it's 2009 now, and large-scale tea gardens haven't been built yet. Of course, there is a donkey cart. Looking at the donkey screaming in the stable, Chen Chen couldn't help but be dazed. What to do? Bai Go subconsciously began to seek help from Chen Chen. In his opinion, he as the team leader was omnipotent. What the hell can we do? We have to use the donkey cart too. Let's go south for a while to find other settlements, and then change cars when we find a motor vehicle. Chen Chen replied speechlessly. In fact, the decision to change cars is not a matter of speed. Theoretically, they could hike 20 kilometers directly on the Myanmar side, which would be fast and in time. But they have too much equipment for 40mm fire guns and 2 fuel air bombs. This alone is a considerable weight, and they also have to carry the maximum amount of ammunition. Each person carries more than 60 kilograms, which is a very terrifying load and has reached the emergency load standard of the US military. Under this load standard, the maximum marching distance must not exceed 5 kilometers. If it exceeds that, the person will definitely be ruined. And you said to abandon part of it. But if we don't have enough firepower, how can we attack Lock Wharf? Dilemma. So let's use the donkey card. The Americans are still using animal-powered transportation in Iraq. So why not let the peasants in northern Myanmar learn from them? So, the few of them took away the 2 donkeys of the fellow villager. Chen Chen did not forget to leave $3,000. Those who grow tea in places like this are all miserable. A donkey is their only hope in life. You want Chen Chen to use it without any psychological burden, but he really can't do such a thing. In that case, what is the difference between him and Lin He, the enemy? In short, Chen Chen also experienced the feeling of the US military, the feeling of driving a donkey. He is not very good at this, but there are 2 people in the team who are good at it besides Li Bang, the other one is Yang Shu. Walking beside him, Chen Chen couldn't help but ask curiously, "Are you also from a peasant family?" Hearing his words, Yang Shu smiled and replied, "Yes, I am a farmer from Hua State. My land was occupied during the development of Mengping district. I joined another corps and fought for a few months. Then I joined the Lion Corps and finally joined your corps, Commander." Shit, did I meet the real boss? Previously, Chen Chen explained to the Chun family the identities of the League gang members using this reason. It seems to be a crying joke that it has just his physique. You joined the Lion Corps, isn't it because your original corps was destroyed? That's not the case. Yang Shu quickly denied it. He understood the hidden meaning of Chen Chen's words. In his opinion, as long as one makes a living in this field, they would be somewhat taboo and concerned about such metaphysical things. So he continued, "It's because the previous rifle group didn't pay salaries. It's just a small rifle group of a dozen people, and there aren't even enough guns for each person. We helped the Hua army fight several battles. The regiment commander received a salary of more than 50,000 yuan, most of which he took for himself, leaving us less than 1,000 yuan each. We were so angry that we just left. Later we heard that the group leader also died. Probably it was retribution." Chen Chen nodded thoughtfully. In fact, what Yang Shu encountered was the normal life of mercenaries in northern Myanmar. How many corps can make hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars like the Lion Corps and the Dongfang Corps? Most of the time, their role is pure cannon fodder. Sometimes they're not even cannon fodder, but just a group of people filling the battlefield to make up the numbers. They lie in the trenches all day and get paid 2 kilograms of rice and 20 yuan. Only when the real fighting starts can they enjoy the treatment of 150 yuan a day as cannon fodder. That's right, we are talking about RMB here. However, Yang Shu was able to join the Lion Corps. Where did his training come from? Chen Chen asked this question. Before Yang Shu could answer, the white dog beside him spoke up. He just played it practicing while playing. In the beginning, we recruited him just because we needed cannon fodder for a mission, so we just randomly recruited a group of people. He survived 2 battles, so we officially recruited him into the group. It's been just over a year now. This kid is growing very fast. He's a good prospect. Indeed, to be able to reach this level in more than a year, he is considered a strong man. And judging from his action of smashing the electrical box in the previous raid, he also possesses certain tactical thinking and is someone who can definitely be trained. Chen Chen gave him a few words of encouragement and wrote down his name. The donkey cart continued to move forward, and after leaving the Ban Poppy Tea Mountain, they finally found a motor vehicle. It was a company specializing in tea transshipment and logistics, with an unattended truck parked at the door. After discussing with Baigo, Chen Chen did not choose to steal the car forcefully. Instead, he woke up the people in the company and rented the car from them. Of course, he gave them enough money to convince them. This is the best way to avoid risks. After all, Qingsheng is a bad place, but if your car is lost, you can call the police and check the license plate. It is still very easy. If you get stopped for this reason, you really deserve to be killed. And with the deal, everything becomes easier. Coupled with their equipment, everyone can see that they're a powerful mercenary group and will not think of going against them, which fundamentally eliminates the risk of exposing their identities before entering Dakali and starting to attack Lock Wharf. With the truck, the rest of the journey was smooth. The group could not take the AH2 highway, but by walking along the road next to the highway, the 40-kilometer journey only took an hour. They were already in Thailand, and with the advantage of local license plates, they did not encounter any unplanned inspections. At 12:30, the truck had arrived near the dock, facing the assault boat across the river. Chen Chen sat in the co-pilot's seat, observing the situation through a telescope. The defenses are tight. Lian Eli is right about this. There are at least 10 visible sentries on the crescent-shaped pier and the riverbank. I have also seen more than 5 hidden sentries. The sentry had 4 heavy machine guns, 2 sniper rifles, and nearly 60 riflemen, who might also be carrying various explosives. The sentry can't see the weapon clearly, but his level can't be low. Besides, this place is very close to the Friendship Bridge, and there's a main road behind the dock. Once a fight breaks out, the garrison deployed there will provide quick support. The defenders there have 2 machine gun speedboats. Their firepower is average, but it will be troublesome if they block the river. Once the gunfire sounded, we only had 3 minutes at most aboard the ship and start. In these 3 minutes, we must take out at least 8 key targets. 4 heavy machine guns and 4 riflemen guarding the assault boat. Speaking of this, Chen Chen couldn't help but grin. The difficulty is really high. White Dog at the side was also observing the enemy's defense. After thinking for a moment, he said, the defense of these people is much better than that of the people at the Regina Golf Course. There are basically no blind spots. We can't sneak, and we can't even cross the river. We need someone to sail the boat across the river, and the others will provide fire support here. That's right. Baigo's thoughts coincided with Chen Chen's. After a little thought, he added 40 rounds for guns, just enough to take out 4 heavy machine gun posts. 2 fuel-air explosive bombs can block the firing range of all the sentries on the shore. The river is 50 meters wide, so smoke bombs can be thrown across. Li Bang will lead the team to block the smoke. The rest of you provide suppressive fire. Who's going to drive the boat? White Dog took over the conversation. I'll go, you stay and take command. You don't even know how to sail this boat. One person is not enough. Yang Shu will go with you. No, Yang Shu has to be responsible for sniper cover. He and you have to kill the rifleman on the side of the boat. Find someone else to follow me. Then the Big Bird will go with you. Clear. The mercenary nicknamed Big Bird stood up. Chen Chen nodded slightly and continued. We need something to float. The bulletproof vests are too heavy, and it's not realistic to swim over. There's a spare tire in the back seat. I've asked them to remove it. It can be used. The White Dog answered without hesitation, which made Chen Chen look at him with new eyes. His consideration of details was still very thorough. After reviewing the situation on the scene and making sure there was no risk, Chen Chen nodded to go. Then he gave orders to everyone. Get ready. Boarding will begin in 3 minutes. Evacuation in 5 minutes. The sound of guns being loaded filled the air, and everyone knew that a tough battle was about to begin. Armed swimming is actually a subject that almost all combat troops will practice. Some practice more, some practice less. The more trained troops are required to be able to swim without relying on floating objects, or relying only on backpacks as floating objects, and to be able to shoot while swimming. The less trained troops can just swim. At this moment, Chen Chen and Niao represent 2 levels under these 2 training methods. Chen Chen could easily hold on to the floating object with one hand and raise his gun over the water with the other hand to prepare for shooting. Although Big Bird was a good swimmer, he could only swim forward by holding onto the tire with both hands and could not make any other tactical moves. Fortunately, their speed was not slow, the river was not wide, and most importantly, the friendly forces behind them had already started attacking the moment they entered the water. Everyone found a favorable shelter on the riverbank. 4 new 40mm rockets were fired, and, within a short time interval of 1 second, they successively hit the 4 heavy machine gun positions on the 4 open sentries. The high explosive bombs directly overturned the mounted heavy machine guns to the ground. The unlucky guys near the sentry post were penetrated by the fragments of the explosion and died on the spot. There was no flame shooting up into the sky, only the sound of a huge explosion that tore through the silent night. Immediately afterwards, Li Bang led 4 pitchers to start throwing smoke bombs to the opposite bank for bombs per round. After 3 rounds, the entire crescent-shaped pier was completely covered by smoke bombs. The remaining smoke bombs were thrown behind them to block any possible prying eyes from Thailand. The general-purpose machine gun began to fire in bursts, and the enemies exposed outside the smoke bombs were knocked to the ground before they could raise their guns to fight back. The 4 soldiers guarding the assault boat were knocked down by Go and Yang Shu with 2 shots each. They were less than 100 meters away from the enemy. If a precision shooter could still miss in such a close-range combat, then the quality of the entire combat team would be really worrying. The climax of the first round of attack lasted only 20 seconds, but the 505th Brigade responsible for guarding the assault boats was completely confused. What's happening? How could someone call from the other side? Yes, they received news that various locations might be attacked tonight, so the company defending the dock was actually reinforced. The 2 heavy machine guns became 4, the 2 snipers became 4, the number of rocket launchers increased to 8, and there were more than a dozen elite soldiers transferred from the brigade commander's guard company. The total number of the guard team reached 80 people. But the problem is that no one expected the attack to come from Thailand. The main direction of their defense was the north, which was the street in Dakali. This led to a serious consequence. After the first round of explosions, everyone began to hide on the spot. But before they had time to observe the situation, smoke bombs exploded around them one after another. At the same time, bullets arrived one by one, reaping lives as if taking roll call. Everyone panicked. They hadn't even seen where the enemy was. Yes, they had trained for field encounters, but the problem was that they had only trained. How could a war be fought like this? Isn't it always a large force rushing forward, then following their comrades and shooting in one direction, then squatting in the trenches or behind the bunkers, changing bullets and continuing to shoot? Now tell me what's going on. Where does all this smoke come from? Who am I? Where am I? Who is shooting me? How did I get shot? Sporadic counterattacks began to occur, but the defending forces were already in a completely contradictory situation. If you come out of the smoke area and fight back, the opponent's precision shooter will be at ease and attack anyone he sees. In the smoke, you can't see anyone at all and can only shoot blindly. At this moment, they turned into ghosts in the smoke. Even if they did not leave the smoke area, they would be hit by bullets one after another as long as there was no cover around them. The battle had only begun for a minute, and at least 20 of the 80 men had already fallen. Retreat! Retreat! Retreat across the street! Retreat upstairs! The Lock Wharf is not actually in the prosperous area of Tachalike. The main reason is that the Lock River and the Mae Sai River are actually the same river, which serves as a boundary river separating Myanmar and Thailand, so it is not easy to find a suitable location for a wharf. This means that even though it is not far from the Friendship Bridge, the buildings are not densely populated due to the relatively rugged terrain around it. At this moment, the defending forces were dozens of meters away from the nearest high-rise building. These dozens of meters are the distance between life and death. Everyone began to try to evacuate to the rear buildings, but even evacuation was not an easy task. It's not easy to tell the direction in the thick smoke. Okay. In a panic, some people were tripped by obstacles on the shore, some slipped and fell into the water, some bumped into friendly soldiers, and then subconsciously fired in panic. The sound of gunfire, water, shouting, collision, and the roar of motors starting in the distance made the whole dock a mess. In this noisy sound, a calm and steady voice came into Chen Chen's headphones. Dive immediately and prepare to use the fuel air explosive bomb. Chen Chen patted the big bird beside him, and the two of them grabbed the rope temporarily tied to the tire and immediately began to dive. Water is the best shelter, as long as the explosion does not occur directly in water. Due to the difference in compression ratio between liquid and air, the distance the shock wave travels is actually much shorter than in the air. Generally speaking, there is a basic set of empirical formulas for avoiding water explosions underwater. If a grenade explodes, you will be basically unharmed if you are 1 meter underwater and within 5 meters of the explosive. For a 105mm artillery shell to explode, if you want to avoid being hurt, you have to be at least 1.5 meters underwater and more than 10 meters away from the explosion point. For a 155mm howitzer, with a charge of about 15 kilograms, you have to be at least 3 meters underwater and more than 20 meters away from the explosion point. Now, considering the special killing method of the fuel air explosive bomb and their distance, Chen Chen and the others actually only need to dive 2 or 3 meters below the surface of the water to avoid all damage. And this is exactly the case. They only saw a flash of fire on the street behind the dock, followed by a muffled sound, and everything returned to silence. When they surfaced again, they saw the port in complete chaos. In fact, the killing effect of fuel air explosive bombs in open areas is not very good, especially because of the problem of explosion speed. The hard damage capability is very worrying. However, poor killing effect is a relative concept after all. Close-range explosions, high temperature, and high pressure can still disable most unprotected infantry units. Coupled with its huge momentum, after 2 fuel air bombs, the entire dock was almost cleared. Chen Chen swam quickly towards the assault boat with the big bird, and at the same time secretly thought in his heart, this kind of good thing is really more the better in the future. It is really damn useful in the battlefield environment of northern Myanmar, which is mainly dominated by light infantry. It only took half a minute for the two to finally swim to the edge of the assault boat. After a stun grenade, the 2 men boarded the assault boat from the rear. They were greeted by 2 confused soldiers on the assault boat who had thrown their guns aside. With almost no hesitation, Chen Chen's gun fired, and the 2 soldiers fell to the ground without even a grunt. Then he quickly rushed into the cockpit and found the key in the keyhole in just a few seconds. He turned the key to unlock it and pressed the ignition button to start it. At this moment, Chen Chen felt that he was not driving a military ship, but a large aircraft used to transport pig feet. This can be regarded as a traditional skill of domestic manufacturers. After all, although the 096 does not have a key, a padlock is designed on the door. White dog, I got the ship, and I'm ready to board. Understood. Prepare to board the ship. The enemy support troops have arrived and are only 400 meters away. That's enough. Chen Chen pushed the accelerator, and the Jianglong's twin diesel water jet propulsion system splashed up huge waves. The bow even lifted up like a racing car launching itself, and it suddenly rushed to the other side. Within a few seconds, the boat had reached the middle of the river. Chen Chen suddenly shifted into reverse gear and drove at full speed. However, due to inertia, the landing craft still crashed heavily into the river beach. Then, the remote-controlled gangway at the bow opened, and Chen Chen shouted loudly, "Get on board! Get on board! Number 1, operate the anti-aircraft gun. I taught you. White dog, operate the bow machine gun. Everyone else hide behind the side of the ship and stop the pursuers." A series of commands were issued, and under alternating cover, everyone began to board the ship. Li Bang rushed to the turret of the twin-mounted small caliber anti-aircraft gun, grabbed the handle, and with the help of the electric motor, turned the muzzle and aimed it at the 2 speedboats that were watching on the river in the distance. However, they did not rush over. It's a pity, but it makes sense. With this kind of firepower, whoever comes will die. Do you dare to go over with 2 small boats? Are you crazy? Soldiers serve to eat, not to have a feast, and certainly not to have others eat their feast. The reinforcements had not yet arrived, and the dock opposite was full of groaning and struggling wounded soldiers. But after a round of fighting, the battlefield fell into a brief, strange vacuum period. Except for the occasional bursts of machine gun fire and the sound of the assault boat's motor, the surroundings were completely silent. Are all the people present? Count them. 10. All set. Let's go. Chen Chen pushed the accelerator again, and the assault boat rushed out. But at this moment, the enemy's reinforcements finally arrived at the port. The firepower used by this batch of reinforcements exceeded Chen Chen's imagination. They have an armored vehicle, a wheeled assault gun whose model is not clear yet, but its purpose can be clearly seen from its outline. Chen Chen's heart sank suddenly, but the battle-hardened team members were no pushovers. He didn't even need to give the order. The moment the assault gun appeared, the last fuel air bomb was fired out. With a loud bang, the flames of the explosion temporarily blocked the firing range of the assault gun, and the infantrymen who followed the artillery vehicle in the attack suffered again. One round of explosion knocked down at least a dozen people. But the problem is, that's all there is to it. The damage of fuel air bombs to armored units is minimal, even for light armor like assault guns. However, as long as they have the basic 3 defense functions, they can basically not cause effective damage unless they are hit head-on. Seeing that the gun machine had already aimed at the assault boat, Chen Chen immediately shouted, "Number 1, anti-aircraft gun fire." After hearing the order, Li Bang immediately turned the muzzle of the 23mm anti-aircraft gun and aimed it at the assault gun in the distance. Boom! The assault gun opened fire, and the shell missed the moving assault boat by a millimeter, causing a huge splash on the water. Immediately afterwards, a series of explosions were heard. Thump, 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 the anti-aircraft guns opened fire. With a roar, the 23mm armor-piercing shell hit the front armor of the assault gun, but bounced off immediately. Chen Chen had no time to watch the scene. He was concentrating on controlling the assault boat, avoiding the armed speedboat coming from the front, and sailing along the Rock River towards the Mekong River. Now, speed is life. Only if you are fast enough can you survive. Ga temporarily took over the command. He first ordered the machine gunners to shoot down the armed speedboats on both sides, and then shouted to Li Bang. Number 1, hit from the side, hit from the side. The front armor has been reinforced. It can't be penetrated. The dock had a very wide view of the river. Li Bang decisively adjusted the muzzle of the gun and fired a burst of shots at the front wheel of the wheeled assault vehicle. His skills were poor, but what he had to do now was not to hit a plane at a distance of thousands of meters, but to hit a stationary armored vehicle at a distance of less than 150 meters. You can even cover it up. After a round of bursts of fire, the front wheels and hubs of the assault vehicle were directly blown to pieces, and the entire vehicle tilted at an awkward angle. The fire then extended upwards, with bullets penetrating the relatively fragile side armor. In just a few seconds, the assault vehicle's gun muzzle and machine gun, which were still moving, stopped moving. But Li Bang did not relax his hand that was holding the trigger. After a few more seconds, flames suddenly rose. Along the gaps of the wheeled armored vehicle, the bright blue flames rushed out like the tail flames of a jet engine, and in a very short time they turned into bright white and then bright yellow. Flames mixed with molten metal shot into the air like a jet, creating a beautiful fireworks display at Lock Pier at night. But this is not the end. The combustion had reached its final stage, and under the high temperature, high pressure, and continuous impact, a horrific explosion occurred. With a loud bang, the turret of the wheeled assault vehicle was blown several meters high and then fell heavily to the ground. Debris flew everywhere, and the shock wave swept across the entire river surface, even creating a circle of obvious white ripples. Hit! White Dog shouted loudly, and everyone threw themselves onto the deck of the assault boat. The assault boat shook violently, but Chen Chen's hand holding the rudder was steadier than ever. He increased the speed again, and the bow of the boat broke through the waves and moved forward. White Dog, still frightened, stood up with his gun in hand. Lock Wharf was already a sea of fire. Amid the billowing smoke, he saw that the assault gun, which was just 99% new, had completely turned into a pile of wreckage. Hidden in the flames and smoke, staggering figures were walking on the dock. They held guns, but no longer dared to shoot or chase. This battle was fought more fiercely and violently than any other battles he had ever fought. Inside the 505th Brigade headquarters, Zhao Jiaoyang sat behind the sand table with a serious expression, listening quietly to the adjutant's report. The enemy launched the attack from the south side of the Rock River. The vehicle used was a truck, a civilian truck. After getting off the vehicle, they immediately deployed their formation and used rocket launchers to knock out 4 of our machine gun fire points. We had no time to react at all, and the Mingxiao's heavy firepower lost its effect immediately. They then threw smoke bombs across the river, close to 50 meters away, with most of them landing on the pier. This seriously hampered our observation, and the officers and soldiers of the 9th Company were stunned. They immediately organized a counterattack, but because of the obstruction of vision, they did not cause much effective damage to the enemy. However, they held up the enemy for a while, buying time for the armored company to move out. The 4th Armored Company set out from the Friendship Bridge Station and arrived at Lock Wharf in less than 2 minutes. But within these 2 minutes, our defenders at Lock Wharf were almost wiped out. This is not the defenders' fault. The other side used a fuel-air explosive bomb. Also, the enemy seemed to have thermal imaging equipment. From the wounded soldiers' accounts, I learned that they were shot even though they were hiding in the smoke and without cover. The enemy is very well equipped and has a clear goal. Anyway, after the 1st Armored Company arrived, we immediately started shelling them, but by then the speed of the assault boat had increased, and the first round of shelling missed. Then they used the 23mm cannon on the assault boat to penetrate the armor of the assault gun from the side, causing a secondary explosion. After the explosion, our defense completely collapsed. No one pursued them anymore, but the frontline commander immediately arranged for an interception near the Golden Triangle Park. At that time, they were still nearly 40 kilometers away from the Golden Triangle Park, and we had plenty of time to mobilize our defense. But the problem is that they didn't take the river route in the Golden Triangle Park, but drove to the vicinity of the Paradise Hotel. You know, that's the narrow confluence of the Ruk River and the Mekong River. It seeps all year round, and the narrowest part of the embankment is less than 5 meters. They just blew up the embankment, waited for a few minutes, and the gap was big enough and the water was deep enough, so they drove directly into the Mekong River from there. How is that possible? Zhao Jiaoyang immediately interrupted the adjutant and said, even if it can be blown up, the depth is not deep enough for the assault boat to pass through. And how can it be blown up in a short time? There! But that's the problem. The adjutant sighed and continued. It was originally a passage where smuggling ships often passed through, and it has basically been destroyed by repeated excavations. We originally planned to take that channel when we sailed this time. Otherwise, the procedures would be too complicated if we went through the Golden Triangle Park port. You could say they have completed the path we were going to take. Zhao Jiaoyang finally showed a look of surprise on his face, and he subconsciously asked, how could they know this road? It's not surprising to know that there is such a road, but it's strange to know that people can use it. In any case, they have already reached the Mekong River. We are still in pursuit, but we dare not get too close. We notified Nakam, and they were going to intercept us along the river, but once this boat went into the water, it was like a tank going up a mountain. I'm afraid we'll have to get on a helicopter, or else the Laotians will have to intercept us. They also have an assault boat. What a joke! This ship originally belonged to them. Zhao Jiaoyang shouted angrily, but then fell into confusion. Yes, if I don't turn to the Lao side, what else can I do? Although it is known as the strongest brigade in southern Shan State, its only armored equipment is concentrated on land. This is why he is so greedy for this ship and is willing to buy it even if there are risks. But now, the ship was taken away. On their own territory, right under their noses, they killed dozens of their own men, and then walked away so brazenly. They also destroyed one of their armored vehicles. Do you know how expensive that armored vehicle is? Zhao Jiaoyang gritted his teeth, and after a long pause, he continued to ask, "Who are the people on the other side? How many people are there?" I don't know exactly how many people there were, but it certainly couldn't be more than 20, because one truck could hold them all, and one assault boat could take them all away. As for their identities, it's hard to say right now, but we can be sure that they are the same group of people who attacked Liani. Nuokangas enemy? Zhao Jiaoyang asked with a frown. Nuokang doesn't have such a strong team. Their fighting style and efficiency, at least I have never seen them before. There are two possible conclusions. One is that the people on the other side are special forces from Thailand's underwater demolition attack force. This view is still very credible. They have the motivation and ability, and their combat style and methods are also consistent. The only thing that doesn't match is the direction they fled. They fled north by boat, heading towards Sanfu and Xiamengla. After hearing this, Zhao Jiaoyang hesitated for a moment and said, "We can't completely rule out suspicion. If it was really them, they wouldn't be able to transport the stolen goods to their home. They would have to transfer the stolen goods to another person first. It's possible that they have connections with Laos, or even the north. It's unlikely in the north, and that's a big contradiction. In the second judgment, some people do think it was the north. But think about it, if it was really the north and they really wanted to make such a big noise, even bigger than going to war, would the north really need to do this? Either they sent someone to secretly make connections and drove away, or the bomb should not have been aimed at the dock but at our headquarters." A chill suddenly permeated Zhao Jiaoyang's back, and he suddenly felt a little relieved. Fortunately, it wasn't. Does that mean we can't find out who it is? The adjutant shook his head and answered frankly, "We definitely won't be able to find out until we catch them." Then catch them? It may be very difficult for our patrol boats to catch them. The ones with strong weapons are slow, and the ones with fast speed have no weapons. Anyway, let's try. Zhao Jiaoyang had no choice but to nod. After a moment, he said, "This is a lesson. A ship that was fully armed and loaded with ammunition and so much cargo, but they just drove it away without even basic safety measures?" Hearing this, the adjutant couldn't help but feel helpless. "We were planning to set off as soon as possible. We can't prepare weapons a few minutes before departure. I will issue orders and strengthen management." "What the hell are you managing?" Zhao Jiaoyang glared at the adjutant angrily and continued, "The most valuable things have already been taken away. Is he going to come back and steal our junk? Stop talking so much. Chase him quickly. Notify Nuokang and have him prepare for the interception." At the same time, on the Jianglong assault boat, Chen Chen sat in the cab, driving the boat while looking at the materials handed over by Go. The pass issued by Zhao Jiaoyang himself, the handover list, and the contact letter with the Thai side all listed antibiotics. TSK. Luckily, they were not shipped over. If they were, Thailand would have been dragged into this as well. With these things, plus the radio, plus the cargo on the ship, plus the ship itself, Zhao Jiaoyang has to admit it whether he wants to or not. No matter which force ends up with it, he will have to pay a heavy price. No need to say more, it's been beaten to death. Now we just need to see how to transport this batch of goods over. Chen Chen shook his head, put the things aside, and continued. Zhao Jiaoyang will definitely not give up so easily, but their water forces can hardly catch up with us. The next person to join the game may be Nuokang. He has such a deep cooperation with the 505th Brigade. It won't do them any good if this little thing is exposed. They will definitely do their best to intercept us, and may even block the entire river. It's really hard to deal with. We are still too passive. There is only one boat floating on the river. If he is determined to pull a few boats and launch dozens of rocket launchers to bomb us, we really can't escape. Not to mention they have helicopters and possibly even individual missiles. Sanfu is a big barrier. Once you pass Sanfu, there are more tributaries of the Mekong River. If they want to intercept us, Nakam will definitely deploy a large number of troops there. We can only rush through, but how to get through is really a problem. Hearing Chen Chen's words, Go nodded and said, "It is indeed difficult. Nakam has a lot of ships. Even if he dispatches a group of civilian ships to intercept near Sanfu, it will be difficult for us to get through. But from the look of you, it seems like you don't take it seriously. Is there any good solution?" Chen Chen shook his head helplessly and replied, "There is really no good way. We can only rush through with force. But we are short of heavy firepower right now. If we rely on just one anti-aircraft gun, the killing efficiency is too low. It's not difficult to kill a group of people, but it's basically impossible to pass through quickly. Now we can only go over and take a look. We bet they won't move that fast. After all, we are less than 20 kilometers away from Sanfu. It has been 90 minutes since we launched the attack. We still have a chance to get ahead of them. Of course, if you are really stuck, just turn around. We have enough fuel now, and we can still sail for at least 300 kilometers downstream, which is enough for us to reach Huisan. That is Xian Ruanlong's territory. I'm giving him such a big gift, giving him the opportunity to overthrow Nuokang. I don't believe he won't agree. After all, this isn't the first time he's done this. Xuan Ruanlong? What's his story? The white dog asked curiously. He had previously commissioned the 7th Brigade to destroy a drug-making camp near Munka. Under the pretext of drug prohibition, it was us who did it. What the hell? The white dog was shocked. Shirokor? You guys? Looking at his expression, Chen Chen suddenly realized that when they did this, their specific identities were indeed not exposed. Only a legend related to the so-called Ashura was circulating everywhere. Now it seems that even the Lion Army has only heard the legend and roughly understood what happened, but is not very clear about the real situation. It is true that there is no name of mine in the arena, but my shadow is everywhere. Chen Chen nodded slightly and replied, yes, the Shura Corps. But those were just random shouts. The purpose was to deceive people. You don't publicize this kind of battle example, but you actually want to hide it from people. If it were us, we would have written it on the fucking sign of the office. But it's true. Our current reputation doesn't need to be enhanced by such trivial matters. Yeah, I understand. Chen Chen stopped talking and asked, what is the current status of the remaining equipment? The rocket launcher has only 4 rounds left, but the fuel-air explosive bombs are gone. I'll just check the equipment on the ship. There are nearly 400 rounds of anti-aircraft gun bullets, which are basically usable. There is an 85 heavy machine gun on the bow, but there are not many bullets, only about 200 rounds left. There is enough ammunition for other rifles and small arms, as well as enough projectiles, but it's hard to say how much they will be of any use on the water. Really, although water battles and land battles seem like both sides are shooting at each other with guns, they're actually completely different things. On land, you have enough maneuverability to establish advantages through cover, and the difference in marksmanship and combat qualities can also largely determine the outcome of a battle. But what about on the water? The ship is so small, and there are so many shooting points. What can you do? This is why modern ships are increasingly developing in the direction of thin skin and large filling, focusing on firepower and preemptive strikes, but no longer focusing on protection. On the one hand, this is because of the excessive lethality, and on the other hand, it is indeed due to the special nature of naval warfare, which leads to the most effective tactic for both sides being long-range missile bombardment. This is the case even for large-scale naval battles at sea, not to mention battles between river ships. Unless the tonnage is reduced to a certain level, to the level of a speedboat or assault boat, there is still some room for maneuvering. Apart from this, there is really no other way. This is a big problem. Chen Chen sighed. The fear of insufficient firepower strikes again. So the situation is now very clear. We only have 2 options. Either turn around and go to the sun, or fight hard. But if we force a fight, our current firepower is far from enough. That is, we have to find a way to get some big guns. How about we rob the Laotian military camp here? The white dog said suddenly. That you're crazy, aren't you? Chen Chen was a little confused. He couldn't understand why after fighting a few battles with him, these people around him became more radical than each other. Not to mention Li Bang and Bao Qi. Sure Dekai has also changed. And now, even Bai Go has begun to clamor to attack the Laotian military camp. What's wrong with each of them? I'm not a reckless man. Why did I bring these people here? After finally stopping rolling his eyes, Chen Chen frowned and said, it is impossible to attack the Laotian military camp, even if we can defeat it. But speaking of which, a little south of Sanfu, I actually know a place where I can get some good stuff. We can use it as a backup plan. Cannon? The white dog asked excitedly. It's not a cannon, but it's more powerful than a cannon. What on earth is that? The white dog's curiosity was completely aroused. Chen Chen smiled slightly and replied, there is a town called Wanbang in Sanfu. Wanbang is surrounded by mountains on 3 sides and water on 1 side, so transportation basically relies on water. But because it's in the Golden Triangle, it's quite economically developed. There are several gas stations. Where there are gas stations, there are oil tankers. I remember the oil tanker, there was a converted fishing boat, and it comes here once a week. Let's go see if he's there. If not, we'll find another way. But if they are, then give them a good time. Having said this, Chen Chen paused for a moment. Then, a hint of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. A dead drug dealer is getting involved in my business? Stop me? Bang on him. Wanbang is 10 kilometers away from Sanfu and 15 kilometers away from the Golden Triangle Park. Due to the advantage of speed, the Dongfeng Corps had actually opened up a gap of nearly 20 minutes on the pursuers behind when they arrived. And 20 minutes is actually enough. Around 3:30 in the morning, Wanbang Wharf. The oil tanker that Chen Chen had seen in his previous life was parked at the dock defenselessly, and tanker trucks were queuing up to transport oil from the tanker. This is actually a routine operation, because this time is when gas stations are least busy, and it is the most suitable time to refuel. Perfect timing, perfect location, perfect condition, perfect luck. It even started. With almost no hesitation, Chen Chen immediately ordered to dock and seize the boat. He handed the boat over to Daniao, who was familiar with the operation and had experience in driving a boat, and he got off the boat with the team. Li Bang continued to operate the anti-aircraft gun. When 8 fully armed men with live ammunition rushed to the shore, the mercenaries in charge of security on the oil tanker were stunned. Having been on the ship for so long, I have encountered robberies before, but it is rare to see one so blatant. We are Nuakong's people. The leading mercenary shouted loudly. Is it true? Is it really Nuakong's? Chen Chen asked. Really? You can go ask around. We have been working with Nuakong for several years. We are all friends. Is it unnecessary? How many years have you really been doing this? Have you ever worked for a shorter period of time? No. They're all old people. They're all confidants. Who else can do this job if they are not confidants? Then there is nothing to say. Chen Chen gave Bai Go a look, and this time, the latter finally understood correctly. The M240 opened fire first, and then, in less than 20 seconds, all the armed mercenaries were wiped out. We are going to blow up this ship and rob Nakam's goods. If he dares to come, I will kill him too. If you don't want to die, get off the boat. I'll only give you 2 minutes. When the protest gunshots rang out, the few remaining militants on the ship were finally frightened and walked down the gangway. It has to come down. Who has ever seen people work like this? Robbery is robbery, but killing people directly? However, they didn't know that Chen Chen had no intention of letting go of any of the militants working for Nuakong, especially those working on the river near Sanfu. Because every drug dealer he let go could become one of the perpetrators of that tragedy in the future. Even if that one doesn't happen, there will be another one. So, why not kill them all? No way. There won't be anyone who sympathizes with drug dealers. There won't be anyone who really falls in love with drug lords. Hey, if I really meet them, I will definitely let them taste the specialties of the Dongfeng Corps looking at the trembling armed drug dealers. Chen Chen asked. Where's the captain? Who is the captain? As soon as he finished speaking, a middle-aged man walked out. I am. Chen Chen glanced at him and asked, what's in it? 2 tanks, a small tank is for liquefied petroleum gas, and a large tank is for gasoline. What the hell? There is still liquefied gas? That's cool. Big bang. Is the boat in the startup state? How to start it? It's on. Rudder, throttle, nothing special. How long will it take you to drive to Sanfu? Sanfu. 30 minutes? No. 20 minutes. 10 kilometers in 20 minutes. Even though it was converted from a fishing boat, it was still too fast. What are you bragging about? Chen Chen rolled his eyes and continued to ask. Tell me, how long will it take? 30 minutes. 30 minutes is definitely enough. The captain was obedient this time. Chen Chen nodded slightly and said to him, get on board. Drive the boat out of the harbor for me. Monkey, come here and fill 2 barrels of oil and put them on the assault boat for use. White Dog, Shorty, Poplar, go get the explosives from the assault boat. By the way, take a few more detonators and have the others check to see if there are any tracer bullets in the machine guns. Remove them and put them in the spare magazines. Put it all in the front. After hearing Chen Chen's orders and seeing Chen Chen's arrangements, everyone knew what he was going to do. Big bang. A super big bang. At this time, Chen Chen had already followed the captain onto the ship, and the other armed men were executed without exception. The gas station security guards who came to transport the oil were trembling. Some of them were related to Nakam and were glad that they were not stupid enough to reveal their names. But it was not the fault of the armed men. Here, Nuo Kong is the god. His armed forces are even stronger than the regular armies of several countries stationed here. Who dares to provoke him? But these people not only dare to provoke us, but judging from their looks, they are determined to provoke us to the end. Damn it, run away quickly. Nuo Kong is being targeted, and anyone who can target him must be capable of killing him. This bastard's time is running out. This was the common thought in the minds of all the onlookers. Chen Chen didn't know that he had unintentionally shaken the prestige of a drug lord. However, he didn't have time to care about this now. After the ship left the port, Chen Chen asked a few questions carefully, silently memorized the captain's accent, imitated a few words in front of him, and then shot the captain dead with one shot. The man had several teardrop tattoos on his hands, which looked a bit weird, but Chen Chen knew what they meant. A murder mark from Mexico. He deserved it. He was keeping up with the trend. If you don't follow this trend, I won't necessarily kill you. White Dog, do you know how to place a bomb? I don't really know. Bai Go answered honestly, and Chen Chen thought for a moment before answering. All C4 were used and arranged in a circle around the gasoline tanks, with the explosion side facing upwards. Place other conventional explosives at intervals from C4, paying attention to the difference in fuse length and explosive detonation velocity. The purpose is to overturn the oil drum and then spill the fuel. Understand? Got it. But we don't have white phosphorus. No need for white phosphorus. Chen Chen continued without any pause. The liquefied gas tank is the best combustion aid. Put a C4 on the top and detonate it first. Can you make a remote control detonator? If you don't have electricity to ignite it, leave me a fuse and I'll light it. It's okay. We still have some of what we did last time we attacked the 7th Brigade camp. The White Dog answered from a distance, and Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief. Having subordinates like this is a relief. Bai Go is meticulous but extremely aggressive. Sure Dakai is trembling with fear and breaks very well. We already have Crouching Dragon and Phoenix Chick. So why are you still worried that the Corps cannot grow stronger? The oil tanker moved forward, gradually increasing in speed, and White Dog finally set up all the bombing points. In fact, the scenes in some movies where an oil tank is blown up by a single shot or cannon shot are absolutely impossible. Not to mention the problem of lack of oxygen. It is not easy to make gasoline burn. The temperature of a cigarette, but is high enough, right? The core temperature is over 800 degrees, but it can't ignite gasoline at all. What about matches? The temperature of the flame core is only 600 degrees, but it can be ignited. Why is this? In a word, the difference between open fire and hidden fire. Gasoline is a liquid that is different from what most people think. In liquid form, it cannot burn at all. Only when the temperature evaporates and the gas concentration in the air reaches a certain level can it be ignited. The reason why Chen Chen deployed so many C4S was to throw the entire tank of gasoline into the air, forming a large amount of droplets, increasing the evaporation area, increasing the concentration of flammable gas in the air, and then ignite it with a tracer bullet. As for that tank of LPG, it's the icing on the cake. This stuff has the highest explosive power of all liquids stored in oil tanks, because it will immediately turn into gas after losing pressure, forming a wide flammable and explosive area. All it takes is a tiny spark to ignite it. Theoretically, the C4 explosion itself can cause a secondary explosion of the liquefied gas tank, but it depends on luck. But with tracer bullets, there is no need to rely on luck. This thing may not explode the fuel tank, but it can hit the gasoline vapor in the air, and it's sure to hit it. But it would be better if there were armor-piercing incendiary bombs, which would be safer. Hey, don't we have a Type 85 23mm anti-aircraft gun? The ammunition belt of this thing should be mixed with WB-148P tracer armor-piercing incendiary bullets. Thinking of this, Chen Chen hurriedly asked. Number 1. Check if there are double red circle pointed bullets in the ammunition belt of the anti-aircraft gun. A moment later, Chen Chen received a reply from Li Bang. Yes, 1 out of every 5. It's stable. Directed explosives are thrown away, ordinary explosives spread, and tracer armor-piercing incendiary bombs are ignited. This is the standard process for making a big bang with an oil tank. The oil tanker is still moving forward, and in order to ensure that it can follow, the assault boat also slowed down. Fortunately, they still have a lead of about 15 minutes over the pursuers behind them. This advantage is enough for them to hold on until Sanfu. No matter where Nuo Kong's men intercept them, this time they will fly into the sky. Chen Chen let out a long sigh and gave new instructions. White Dog, go and remove the fence at the stern and find something to make a springboard for me. You guys retreat first. I'm going to jump from the stern. I have to make sure I stay as far away from the propeller vortex as possible. Are you kidding me? Yangshu, go and start the boat. The captain should retreat first. Open your head. Chen Chen immediately interrupted by Go and continued. Do you think anyone can drive a boat? Just do whatever I tell you to do. Then Yangshu and I will stay behind to provide cover. Don't do this stupid thing to me. Chen Chen drank decisively. I'm not fucking going to die. This is the only way. None of you know how to steer a boat. If you can't control the direction, all your efforts will be wasted. For every extra person covering me, the assault boat behind me will have to stay stationary in the open water for a few seconds or even more than 10 seconds. During these 10 seconds, the RPG has been blasting you. There was silence on the intercom for a few seconds, and the White Dog finally answered. Understood. Follow the order. At this moment, Go felt mixed emotions. The shipwreck really did not fit any of his impressions of the leader or the superior. First of all, he is definitely not a commanding talent who is afraid of death. But you want to say that he led by example? Not exactly. His leading by example was definitely not for the so-called morale boosting or setting an example, nor was it for posturing. It is purely for the sake of highest efficiency and highest success rate. So every person's role is calculated and utilized to the utmost, even his own. You would say that such a person is selfless? That is definitely not the case. He is just a cynic and only wants to win. Follow him, and you will definitely have meat to eat. Without any further hesitation, Go prepared the springboard that Chen Chen needed, and then jumped into the water from the springboard with several people. After swimming a few dozen meters, they boarded the assault boat that was waiting for them. At this time, Chen Chen was staring straight ahead in the direction of Sanfu. The enemy is there, but soon it will be gone. Not long after, on the surface of the narrow river near Sanfu, an armed speedboat shuttled back and forth on the river, commanding and dispatching all the temporarily dispatched ships. His name is Miao. He is the leader of a regiment-level drug trafficking armed force under Nakam. The reason why he appears here today is actually that he has been given the order in a time of crisis. He led 12 boats and nearly 200 people to intercept an approaching assault boat, which had only 10 people on board. This seems to be a simple task, but Miao is very clear that the person who can snatch this ship from the 505th Brigade and drive it all the way here along the Mekong River is definitely not an ordinary person. I heard that they have a 23mm anti-aircraft gun on their ship, which should be their magic weapon for victory. But so what? How will you respond when I have 12 large armed cargo ships in front of you? Fight? I won't fight you. I'll just block you. Just use up all your bullets. No matter how many bullets you have, there is always a limit. You can try to see how many of my ships you can sink after using up all your bullets and shells. If we keep wasting time, who will suffer? I don't have to run away anyway. At worst, you can just abandon the ship, and my mission will be accomplished. Anyway, what I want is a boat, not people. The light of the searchlight kept sweeping across the river. The sky in the distance had already slightly brightened. Miao raised the telescope and stared at the river surface where the water and the sky met. And just a few minutes later, when his eyes were already a little tired, the shadow of a ship finally appeared in front of him. I can't see clearly what kind of ship it is, but it doesn't look like an assault boat. The adjutant at the side also noticed the approaching ship. After observing for a moment, he said, "It seems to be Tanjin's oil tanker. He may not have received the notice." After unloading the oil in Wanbang, he has to go to Sanfu to reload the cargo. Hearing this, Miao nodded slightly. This is a very reasonable reason. After all, they want to arrest people, not completely block the river. It is normal for ships to come. However, at this special moment, everything must be done with caution. So he opened his mouth and gave the order. Everyone, get ready, set up the recoilless rifles, and aim at the oil tanker. Ah, Captain, this is an oil tanker. Even if there is a problem, we can't attack it, right? Didn't you say it was empty? Miao was a little displeased, but the adjutant patiently explained, it's definitely not completely empty, but the emptier it is, the more likely it is to explode. Just ask over the radio, and if there is really a problem, we will consider intercepting it. Go ask now. Clear. The adjutant answered immediately, then picked up the radio receiver and gave orders to the rapidly approaching tanker. Tanjin, what's going on? A moment later, a slightly hoarse reply came from the oil tanker. Someone's chasing me. Someone's chasing me from behind. Let me pass. The oil tank is going to explode. Miao, who was standing by, heard the conversation on the radio, and his heart suddenly tightened. The assault boat finally arrived. Immediately, he issued an order. Let him come over. Prepare to fight. Understood. Tanjin, come here. The cargo ships lined up on the river gradually made way for a narrow passage. But before the passage was formed, Miao suddenly realized something was wrong. Without using a telescope, he had already discovered something unusual on the oil tanker. There was not a single sailor to be seen on the deck. Finished. This guy is here to charge the checkpoint. Cannons. Load the cannons. Sink it. Miao Eng's voice was hoarse and hysterical, but it was too late. Someone jumped into the water from the stern, but the oil tanker continued to ram towards them. Yes, 23mm anti-aircraft guns cannot sink cargo ships. But the problem is, can our RPG and recoilless guns sink a tanker at full speed in a short time? It depends on luck. The distance has been shortened to 150 meters, and under the intensive artillery fire, the tanker finally began to tilt, but the speed remained unchanged. Fire! Fire! Retreat! Take me with you! Miao Ang's eyes were filled with fear, and he turned his head to look at the riverbank that seemed out of reach. This was the second to last scene he saw in his life. The last one was the fire that exploded on the oil tanker and shot up into the sky. The fire of hell rose from the ship and fell from the sky. The shock wave swept across the entire river surface, spreading to a distance of hundreds of meters around the oil tanker. The surface of the river was completely sunken, as if it had been hit by a heavy hammer of heavenly punishment. Even if you observe from the air, you can see the riverbed directly. In the silence, the splashing flames swept past. Moses parted the Red Sea, and Chen Chen parted the Mekong River. With an exploding oil tanker. Fuck! The white dog stared at the scene in front of him in amazement, trembling all over. Even though it was several hundred meters away, this small assault boat was almost capsized by the huge waves. This was the first time he had seen such a huge explosion, and he couldn't imagine what the speedboats at the center of the explosion had experienced. Perhaps they didn't have time to experience anything, because they had already been blown away. It was the first time in my life that I sailed into the sky, and also the last time. 4 of the 12 armed freighters were overturned. Their formation was not just messed up, but was completely destroyed. There was no way the people on the boat could survive. Under such high temperatures and such a wide explosion range, a single soldier's fuel air explosive bomb was nothing more than a miniature bomb. The assault boat moved forward and picked up Chen Chen, who had surfaced more than 400 meters from the center of the explosion. The first time the white dog saw Chen Chen, he rushed up directly. Captain, damn it, I want to learn this. Pull me up. Chen Chen's bulletproof vest was soaked in river water and was terribly heavy. He was really exhausted, having swum over 100 meters without any floating objects, and even dove into the water to avoid the explosion. Luckily, he didn't drown. If that had happened, it would have become a joke in hell. It sounds absurd that the commander of the Dongfeng Corps, which had defeated the biggest drug dealer in the Golden Triangle, drowned. Grabbing the white dog's hand, Chen Chen climbed onto the boat with difficulty, and then immediately gave the order. Big Bird, drive the boat and rush over. In fact, he didn't need to say much. The Big Bird had already started to speed up. A distance of more than 400 meters was not a problem at all for the assault boat moving at full speed. But when they passed the center of the explosion, Go truly felt how destructive the explosion was. There were corpses floating everywhere on the river. Several armed freighters were burning, and the oil tanker had been completely blown into pieces, with no trace of it left. Occasionally, wailing sounds could be heard coming from the tilted cargo ship, which sounded extremely harsh in the quiet night. Even Go, who had experienced countless life and death situations on the battlefield, couldn't help but feel a tingling sensation on his scalp at this moment. Is this a real war? What I experienced before was really just a small fight. In a few seconds, hundreds of lives were wiped out. The person who made this plan was calmly taking off his boots in the cabin and pouring out the accumulated water. The life and death of these people seemed to have nothing to do with him, and he showed a completely indifferent attitude. On the battlefield, human lives are just numbers. The white dog suddenly realized this. He walked back to Chen Chen and said, "They were all blown up. These people, don't tell me, they are in a miserable state." Chen Chen replied without even raising his head. "The number of people killed by the drugs they sell every year is even worse. All I can say is that they deserve it." The white dog nodded silently and wanted to say something, but Chen Chen continued. "A gentleman cannot bear to see a man die when he sees him alive, and cannot bear to eat his flesh when he hears his voice. This is normal human nature. But when expressing human nature, we must also distinguish the target audience. If the enemy was just an ordinary soldier in a warlord's army, I might mourn with you. But these people are drug dealers. You are humane to them. Does he treat you humanely?" "No." The white dog answered decisively and immediately added, "I don't sympathize with them, nor do I mourn for them. Absolutely not. I just feel the power of weapons." "That's good." Chen Chen nodded slightly, paused for a few seconds, and suddenly said, "Sympathy directed at the wrong person is the greatest cruelty to the innocent." "Clear." The white dog answered firmly. At this moment, he had a new understanding of his leader. Can kill, but not indiscriminately. Be calm, but not cold-blooded. Be good. What good deeds did he do in his previous life to be able to meet such a good boss in this life? How can he be a mercenary? He is a warlord, Ba. Is a warlord worthy of him? The white dog suddenly laughed. Chen Chen looked at him in confusion and asked, "What are you laughing at?" "I think of happy things." "Duh. Don't imitate me." Chen Chen rolled his eyes and ignored him. At this time, the assault boats had completely crossed the blockade line organized by Nakam and continued northward from Sanfu, where the river channel was open. There were still many peepers around, but no ship dared to move forward. After all, this sharp sword is not something any of them can stop. The road ahead is smooth. The white dog followed Chen Chen again with its legs wide open. At this time, the pursuers were already afraid, and others did not dare to get close. Their situation became much safer, and he, the deputy commander, also had time to rest. It may not be a smooth journey. Nakam may go crazy. Him? You mean he will chase after me again? Of course I will chase him. He won't give up so easily. He's a lunatic. He will do whatever it takes. We still have to remain on alert. But the good news is that we suddenly have relatively sufficient ammunition again. Really, instead of wasting ammunition on charging the checkpoint, the ammunition can be used against the pursuers later. But if you say so, then we in Nuakong will really be in a situation of life and death. He and I are like that, Chen Chen said silently in his heart. In fact, he has an attitude of never giving up on all drug dealers here. He is not strong enough now, but if he really develops into a hegemon in the future, he will attack everywhere without hesitation and kill all these people. This isn't about any lofty, idealistic ambitions, it's just about revenge. Because he had seen too many atrocities these drug dealers had committed against their comrades. The brigade I was in was fine. After all, it was a combat unit. The conflict happened in an instant, and it was a fight to the death without any hesitation. But those investigators and intelligence officers who belong to another system are not so lucky. The most cruel punishments imaginable have been inflicted on them. Death is even a blessing for them. In his previous life, Chen Chen would often dream about the bloody intelligence at midnight. It had almost become a kind of PTSD, so that every time he thought about it, he would be particularly eager for weapons and gunpowder. Nuakong. Only a few of your people were killed in the explosion, so you'd better not be scared. Catch up and send more. Well, it would be better to send some elite troops over or come here yourself. I still have 423mm shells waiting to be stuffed into your mouth. Chen Chen let out a long sigh and walked into the cockpit of the assault boat. He quietly wiped the soaked 416 Hong Kong dollars, waiting for the next battle that was bound to come. At the same time, inside the 505th Brigade headquarters, Zhao Jiaoyang stared at the adjutant in astonishment and asked in shock. What are you talking about? All of Nuakong's 200 men are gone. What happened? They dropped a nuclear bomb into the Mekong River? Looking at his expression, a bitter smile appeared on the adjutant's face. It's not a nuclear bomb, but it's close. They found a fully loaded oil tanker in Wanbang, rushed to the front of Nakam's defense line, and detonated it. The method was very sophisticated. It was not a simple blow-up of the oil tank. It was first scattered with directional explosives and then detonated with some kind of incendiary bomb. This can be seen from the environment at the explosion site. The impact in the center was very strong, but the periphery was mainly burning and killing. Not all of the 200 people were killed, but almost all of them were dead. Nuakong sent a group leader there, but he has not been fished out yet. We all suspect that he may have been blown to pieces. What is Nuakong's reaction now? I don't know. I can't get in touch with him. He might have gone crazy. Hearing this, Zhao Jiaoyang let out a long sigh. 200 people were gone in an instant. He originally thought that with the combat effectiveness of that combat team, even if these 200 people could not stop them, they could at least seriously slow down their escape speed. He originally thought that if the battle reached its most difficult and stalemate point, he would have a chance to persuade them to surrender and convince them to leave the ship behind and escape safely. He originally thought that the pursuers he arranged would arrive quickly and crush them with powerful firepower. But none of this happened. The defense line that seemed almost impenetrable to him was shattered by a slap from the opponent. Quick and easy. Is this a conspiracy? There is no conspiracy in the world that can blow everything to pieces. Is that a tactic? Tactics. Zhao Jiaoyang clenched his fists and found that his whole body was numb. This is a natural reaction after experiencing a huge shock, and it will probably take a long time for me to digest this numbness. After fighting for so many years, this feeling comes for the first time. It should not be called just fear, but horror. Who is it? I originally thought that they were sent by the 756th Brigade, but now it seems that the 756th Brigade is worthy. Such combat effectiveness, such tactical level, such technical level. What is this crossing the river dragon? After a long silence, Zhao Jiaoyang finally unclenched his fist. He asked hesitantly and with some doubt. Tell me, is there a possibility that the other party's target is actually Nuakong, and we are just an extra? That it is indeed possible. The adjutant nodded slightly and continued. There is a possibility that the other party has no intention of doing anything to the 505th Brigade, but we just happen to be related to Nuakong. Then why are they robbing our boat? That's not right. They're coming for us? Zhao Jiaoyang shook his head and suddenly came to his senses. No matter what, they still pose no threat to the 505th Brigade. We have too few men and too poorly equipped. We can't be frightened by such examples of warfare. But let's withdraw the pursuers first. Observe the situation clearly before making plans. As for the deal with Nakam, let's just postpone it. Understood. Then do you want to continue pushing forward the matter over there with Kaimori? Yes, of course. Zhao Jiaoyang answered without hesitation. We need to make more money. Upgrade our equipment. It's already like this. Why not do it to the end? I just don't believe it. Could he really hit me on the head? While Zhao Jiaoyang was worrying about the follow-up plans, a talk related to the situation in northern Myanmar was underway in Munka, Vientiane Hotel. Peng Shuqing, Jackal, He Bupa, and Bao Xiaomei sat together, drinking tea and discussing the incredible information they had just obtained. But so the 9 people on the sunken boat killed the 505th Brigade, robbed their assault boats, and then blew up dozens of Nuakong's men. But there have been no casualties so far? Can you confirm the authenticity of the information? To be honest, it sounds like a complete fantasy. The one who spoke was Bao Xiaomei, her face still wearing delicate makeup, but at this moment, the other 3 people in the box had no intention of observing her beauty. Instead, they were looking at the latest intelligence compiled by He Bupa's adjutant in front of them. After hearing her words, the Jackal replied without even looking up, Xinchuan never jokes with me. Whatever he says is what it is. There is absolutely no water mixed in, let alone exaggeration. On the contrary, out of caution, he is likely to underestimate the results. Now he told us that he only killed dozens of people. I suspect that this number should be at least doubled to 100, or even close to 200, to be consistent with the logic of the entire intelligence. The explosion on the Mekong River alone could not have killed and injured only a few dozen people. Shipwreck. He has finally lived up to his nickname. It's not your own boat that's sinking, it's someone else's boat. At this point, Jackal couldn't help but laugh. Before anyone else could reply, he continued, the 756th Brigade must have been shocked this time. We only asked him to collect some evidence, but he turned the whole of Dakali upside down. It was a simple yet effective strategy. If you ask me, just let Chen Chen kill Zhao Jiaoyang. If you pay him more money, he might be able to do it. As soon as these words came out, the other 3 people present could not help but nod their heads. Although this was just a joke, it would have been laughed off if it were anywhere else. But when it comes to the Dongfeng Corps, it seems so reasonable. But of course, they're just talking about it, and will not really do it. After all, Zhao Jiaoyang is not Chen Yimin, so it is not easy to kill him. This topic was lightly skipped. After thinking for a moment, Bao Xiaomei continued. If the situation develops to this point, the unrest in the 505th Brigade, or Dakali, is basically no longer a suspense. The sinking of the ship caused such a big commotion that Zhao Jiaoyang has been put on the spot. No matter what, he has no choice but to stick to it and continue his marijuana business to expand his military strength. Otherwise, he can't afford to compensate for the losses on Nakam's side. He has to fight a battle with Nakam first before the matter of the 756th Brigade is settled. It just doesn't make sense for him, and he wouldn't be that stupid. In other words, the chaos in southern Shan State was actually certain at this moment. That's right. He Bupin nodded in agreement, and then said, "That means our cooperation can begin immediately?" "I think so," Bao Xiaomei answered calmly. She smoothed her hair slightly, and after hesitating for a moment, she made a rare promise. "As soon as the fighting in southern Shan State begins, you can launch the planned operations. Hua State will lend a helping hand, but you must make sure that the Dongfeng Corps must not be used in the first wave of battle. What we need is chaos, but if the Dongfeng Corps intervenes, I doubt that they will become stronger and stronger in a short period of time and then quickly put an end to the chaos. This is not the result we want. This is not the result I want." "Certainly." He Bupin nodded sincerely. He looked at Bao Xiaomei opposite him and was surprised to find that there seemed to be something different flashing in her eyes. After passing Sanfu, the Dongfeng Corps had a smooth journey. Nuo Kong was probably stunned and was unable to organize a quick pursuit in time. As a result, Chen Chen had already passed the Menglao Wharf without seeing any enemy. It went too smoothly. Chen Chen even had an illusion in his mind. Could it be that he was really scared? This didn't seem right. Didn't they just blow up a few of your ships and kill a few people? Why are you so cowardly? Of course, Chen Chen always believed that he should despise the enemy strategically, but he must take the enemy seriously tactically. Therefore, based on the limited equipment available, he still made the most elaborate arrangement. First of all, we absolutely cannot abandon the ship. This ship is the basis for us to complete the mission. Therefore, all our subsequent tactics will revolve around this ship. With limited equipment and manpower, we can only fight a mobile war. Once we reached Wangnam Phuc, we were within the control area of the Burmese army in Kingtung, so Nakam didn't dare to pursue us any further. The biggest problem is whether the 756th Brigade can arrive in time. If not, we may have to fight a positional battle at the river mouth. How many rounds are left in 40 rounds? The last 4 shots. They were useless before. The white dog replied. That's about enough. Chen Chen nodded slightly. The river near Wangnam is narrow, and Nong Kang's pursuers can only come from the river. There is no room to dodge and maneuver, so basically every hit is accurate. As for assault boats and speedboats, forget it. It's just a matter of an 85 heavy machine gun. After thinking for a while, he said, let's divide the responsibilities. The 10 people are still divided into 2 combat teams, one of which will stick to the assault boat and use heavy firepower and explosives to kill local ships in crowded areas. Group 2, quickly jump into the water after the battle begins, find a shallow beach, and use the river as cover to block the attack. There's no need to go ashore. The current is our best cover. Of course, the enemy will definitely use water as cover, so we must first conduct a hydrological reconnaissance of the river at our destination and try to trap the enemy in deep water. At the same time, we also need to deploy broadswords on both sides of the river. How many broadswords do we have left? 6, and they're basically useless. That's enough. No matter how many people come, they will all die, Chen Chen said confidently. Now it depends on whether the 756th Brigade can respond in time. It is still a bit difficult for them. Can Yi Bangxiong be trusted? Li Bang on the side suddenly asked. He is not credible, but he must be credible this time. If he dares to make a mistake, I will kill him. Don't tell me you have another trick. Airstrikes are definitely not going to work. What's next? Bai Go's eyes were full of curiosity. He really thought that if Chen Chen was pushed into a corner, he would kill Yi Bangxiong as well. This is called threatening. Do you understand what threatening means? I didn't say, I must kill him. Chen Chen rolled his eyes, but Bai Go didn't buy it. But you must have thought it through. There must be a plan for the things you don't say. There must be more than one plan for the things you say. If one day you say you have a sure win, then your opponent is basically dead. Don't talk nonsense. How is it possible? Chen Chen ignored him and lowered his head to study the map again. This area is so desolate that there is no human habitation around it, so there are only simple contour lines on the map, which looks quite difficult to draw. Fortunately, it was still usable. After spending a few minutes, Chen Chen finally planned out a combat area that was extremely advantageous to his side. The river channel is dumbbell-shaped, and it automatically becomes wide then narrow, and then wide again toward the west. This means that the flow rate is slow at first, then fast, and then slow again, and the depth is shallow at first, then deep, and then shallow again. Our side can set up an ambush in the wide area on the westernmost side and open fire after the enemy enters the narrow area. At this time, the ship's forward speed had been slowed down by the first shallow beach. After entering the deep water area, it was not possible to speed up, and there was no way to abandon the ship immediately. With a salvo of rockets, victory will surely be achieved. Not to mention that once people fall into the water, they will not be able to fight in the turbulent water and may even drown. Perfect. Chen Chen closed the map with satisfaction and commanded the assault boat to move forward and arrived at the designated ambush area more than 2 hours later. After hydrographic reconnaissance, Chen Chen discovered that this area was more suitable for combat than he had expected, because there were many reefs in the shallows on the easternmost side, and the deep water area in the middle had undercurrents due to the rugged underwater terrain. It is simply a God-given fortress, a fortress made of water. Chen Chen moored the boat at the shore with satisfaction. After making tactical arrangements, he began to contact He Bongxiong using a satellite phone to confirm the location of the other party's support troops. And through communication with him, the status of the support troops was also confirmed. The enemy bypassed Jingdong from Wantan Mountain with a total of 400 light infantrymen, carrying a large number of 40 rifles and a small number of bulk 107 rifles, as well as 2 heavy machine guns. It can't be said to be full of martial virtues, but it is definitely enough. Next, they just need to wait where they are and see whether they arrive first or known camps people arrive first. Chen Chen heaved a long sigh of relief and walked to the bonfire that had just been lit to dry his clothes. But at this moment, a vague puff sound suddenly came from the sky. The helicopter is coming. Nuakong actually dared to fly a helicopter here, although Wang Nanfu is still far away from the Burmese army's base in Jingdong. It is their territory after all. Is Nuakong really crazy to make such a big fuss here? Without thinking too much, Chen Chen immediately ordered. Number 1, operate the anti-aircraft gun. White Dog, go operate the machine gun. Everyone else, hide where you are. Don't use rocket launchers, use guns. We can't let the enemy have a chance to escape. If they gain an advantage in air reconnaissance, there's no point in fighting this battle. After hearing his words, everyone took action immediately. Chen Chen found a tree trunk lying on the ground and set up the M82A1 that had never been used. Using anti-material sniper rifles to shoot down helicopters is a scene that can be seen in many movies. But in reality, actually hitting the target is not as easy as it seems. If it is a routine flight reconnaissance, the helicopter's altitude generally has to reach 1,000 to 2,000 meters. At this distance, you can't hit it with a hammer, and you can't even see it. If it is low-altitude reconnaissance, although the altitude will be reduced to below 500 meters under high-speed maneuvers, your gun muzzle cannot keep up with the speed of the helicopter. So in summary, using a sniper rifle to shoot down a helicopter is almost nonsense. But this does not mean that it is completely impossible. Chen Chen is gambling. He was betting that Nakam would make a common mistake in helicopter reconnaissance, that is, maneuvering in a straight line and at low altitude along the river. Doing so can greatly improve reconnaissance efficiency, but it comes with extremely high risks. Direct firepower can easily lock onto a moving helicopter, and in this case, the lethality of the semi-automatic M82A1 in his hand is obviously much greater than that of the 416 Hong Kong dollars. Chen Chen took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. After half a minute of waiting, a black that appeared in his sight. The helicopter came and did a real straight-line reconnaissance along the river. SA-316 Skylark helicopter, a modified version for the Golden Triangle Armed Forces. The side door had been removed, and the muzzle of a miniature machine gun of unidentifiable type protruded out of the cabin. A smile appeared on Chen Chen's face. He said, "Everyone pay attention. Open fire upon my command. 1,100 meters away. 800 meters away. 600 meters. Fire. Bang, 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 bang." 5 consecutive gunshots were heard. Chen Chen stood up and picked up the 416 Hong Kong dollars to continue firing. At this time, Li Bang had already pulled the trigger of the Type 85 anti-aircraft gun. The armor-piercing bullet flew out of the barrel and rushed towards the helicopter. Not to mention by Go, the Type 85 heavy machine gun was extremely stable under his operation, and the tracer bullets even formed straight lines in the dim morning light. In addition, all rifles were firing. The helicopter under attack subconsciously tried to ascend, but it was too late. The pilot was surprised to find that the control stick could not be pulled, because under the dense barrage of bullets, the hydraulic transmission device had been shattered. The fire network was crisscrossed, and in just a few seconds, the fragile Skylark fell suddenly and inexplicably. "You got up?" "I shot him in 1 second." Huge splashes of water appeared on the river in the distance. Chen Chen didn't know whether his shots hit the target or not, but it didn't matter at all. To shoot down a plane, you need to use a saturation attack. Use whatever you have. If you increase the probability a little bit, you can double your chances of winning. Big Bird, drive the boat over there and see if the machine gun on the plane can be removed. Remember to reload it. Yangshu, follow us and stay in the woods to keep watch. The rest of you follow me and ambush us at the rapids. The 756th Brigade support is still about 15 kilometers away from us. We have to hold out for at least another 2 hours. If we lose this battle, we will gain nothing. If we win this battle, we'll all get rich. After confirming the helicopter crash, Chen Chen quickly issued orders and everyone took action, each looking for a suitable location to hide. Although it was said that they had to use the water as cover, in reality, not everyone had to hide in the water at the beginning. Chen Chen's plan was to launch an attack from the jungle first, and then after the battle became intense, find a way to use the shallows as cover and start the battle around the assault boat. So, they still had to find suitable cover in the woods, especially a suitable camouflage point. Chen Chen checked along the way, kicking any that were not well hidden or conspicuous. It took him 5 minutes to adjust everyone's positions. From the direction of the river, there was no longer any abnormality to be seen. At the same time, Big Bird had arrived at the location where the helicopter crashed, and Yangshu's voice came from Chen Chen's headphones. "Captain, the machine gun is broken and cannot be dismantled. The barrel is damaged, as if it was hit by a bullet. It cannot be used. Forget it if it's useless." Chen Chen felt a little regretful, but not too disappointed. After all, falling from such a height, if the weapon system is not broken, it is good luck, and if it is broken, it is normal. However, just as he finished speaking, Yang Shu spoke again. But the rockets on this plane don't seem to be damaged, Captain. Do you want to remove them? What the hell? What rockets? They actually installed rockets? Chen Chen was shocked. He never expected that Nong Kong could be so generous. Let's not talk about the Skylark modified armed helicopters for now. After all, this type of helicopter has been modified in various countries and is also popular among some groups that do not have the qualifications to purchase armed helicopters. Adding a minigun or a small cannon to it is standard practice, but rockets. The most famous aviation rocket in the world today is the American Hydra 70, which is the Hydra 70mm rocket. The most classic combat scene of this thing is to install it on the Apache or Longbow Apache, and then shoot at terrorists standing on the top of a mud house. Anyone who has played a game called Medal of Honor will surely have a deep memory of that scene. Of course, such a scene can indeed represent the performance characteristics of aerial rockets. Its accuracy is relatively poor, but its range of lethality is strong, its distance is long, its quantity is large, and it is economical compared to missiles. But the problem is that most of the time, you can only see it in the regular aviation forces of various countries. Drug lords use rockets? Bullshit. This thing is hard to buy, not to mention the aiming system. Yes, there are rockets, but I don't understand what is written on it. Big Bird, come and get me. Chen Chen gave the order decisively. The distance of several hundred meters was not far. 5 minutes later, he had arrived next to the crashed helicopter. The helicopter crashed directly into the shallows and woods on the shore. The water was less than 50 centimeters deep. All the passengers on the plane were dead, and one was even hanging on a tree. However, none of them escaped the fate of being shot again. The helicopter itself was surprisingly still intact. Actually, this wasn't particularly strange. Helicopters are different from fixed-wing aircraft. If an accident occurs, as long as the rotor is not completely broken, the impact force of the crash will be greatly reduced due to the action of self-spin. There are many cases in the United States where Black Hawk pilots survive crashes. In some cases, after losing power and falling from a height of thousands of meters, the aircraft can even land smoothly by waiting for the rotor speed to reach the standard and then pulling up. Chen Chen ignored the corpses and followed Yang Shu's guidance, looking at the rocket nest on the side of the helicopter. Fuck, Murat 155H. Snap. He couldn't help but scream out. At first, he thought that the rocket Yang Shu was talking about was something like the S-8KOM from the Russians, or at least a modified version. But unexpectedly, Nakam actually used the standard version. This thing can be said to be a classic modification of the Skylark helicopter. This weapon mounting solution can be seen on most military versions of the SA-316. It seems that the relationship between Nuakong and the military of various countries is more subtle and complicated than Chen Chen expected. Chen Chen circled the helicopter and tried to restart the circuit. But unfortunately, although the crash was not serious, the electronic system of the helicopter was eventually destroyed. Perhaps a main cable was broken. Such a failure cannot be repaired in a short period of time. It's a pity that not every rocket is 107 fire, and not every rocket can be ignited with an open flame or dry cell battery. The SNEB rocket is ignited by a pure electric shock ignition system, and a series of safety measures are designed on the primer. Not only does it require electricity, but the ignition protocol also requires a pre-start program to control. If the helicopter has no electricity, then there is really nothing we can do. He shook his head and said, "This thing is useless, at least not useful. After this battle, we'll find a way to dismantle it and repair it. It would be best if we could take the helicopter with us. If we can fix it, we will be truly wealthy." There was no exaggeration in what Chen Chen said. In northern Myanmar, if any force got a helicopter, especially one equipped with a weapon system, the status of this force would not only be greatly improved, but would skyrocket. Perhaps the only problem is how to convince other major forces to allow it to keep the helicopter down. But with the current relationship with the Dongfeng Corps, it should be no problem to deal with others. After checking the helicopter, Chen Chen made one final check, collected all the guns and ammunition, and took them away. After making sure there were no other supplies, he returned to the designated ambush site with Big Bird. Less than 5 minutes after they returned, there was a report from Yang Shu, who had gone out to scout, that he had discovered enemy traces. Someone is coming. The voice of the poplar is very low. 10 ships, 6 small speedboats, 4 armed cargo ships, at least 100 people, about 800 meters away from me, 1,500 meters away from the ambush position. There are people on the shore too. I can't tell how many there are. They are 200 meters away from me and 1,000 meters away from the ambush position. Advance by land and sea, and conduct reconnaissance with scattered troops. It seems that after the helicopter crashed, the other party has become more vigilant. This is a bit troublesome. The ambush Dongfeng Corps was caught in a dilemma. If they destroyed the targets on the shore first, it would mean that all their ambushes would be exposed. If we don't fight them and put them at a closer distance, the danger level will increase greatly. The difficulty of ambushes suddenly increased, which also led to the shaking of higher-level strategies. The strategy has entered the decision-making zone. Chen Chen must decide before the enemy continues to advance to the range of exchange of fire. Should he flee immediately and try his luck and bet that the assault boat can escape the pursuit of the speedboat in the extremely harsh hydrological environment of the river, or should he hold his ground and completely defeat the pursuers? "Captain, what should we do?" The white dog holding the machine gun asked through the intercom. "We can't fight the jungle guerrillas. We need to protect the boat. If we want to fight, we must first eliminate the enemy's ground forces, but we have too few people and our killing efficiency is too low." Hearing his words, Chen Chen frowned. He stood up subconsciously and observed the surrounding terrain. The information on the picture appeared in Chen Chen's mind as if it had life. And at this moment, a genius idea suddenly flashed through his mind. Yes, the ground forces must be addressed. Yes, the Dongfeng Corps had too few people and its killing efficiency in the jungle was too low. But the problem is that killing does not necessarily have to be done by people or guns. We're taking a step back. To deal with ground forces, it is not necessarily necessary to rely on killing. Chen Chen spread out the map and observed the terrain carefully. Combining it with the GPS in his hand, he made a surprising discovery. The rapids area where they were actually had two forks, one leading northwest to the north, and the other leading southeast to Jingdong. In the middle is a triangular area of lush jungle, covering an area of about 5 square kilometers. If the enemy's ground forces want to get close to our side and reach the rapids area where our side is ambushing, they must cross this triangular area. Their travel time in this area will be at least 30 minutes. How long would it take for a fire to start with a large amount of accelerant and a strong westerly wind? The 2 large barrels of oil I had taken from the oil tanker came in handy. At that time, I was indeed just worried about the lack of fuel, but to be honest, I also had a hidden thought in my mind. If we really can't do it and there is really no way out, we will set fire to the mountain. Now, the situation is actually more favorable. He didn't need to burn a large area, just take advantage of the west wind and burn this triangle area. Without further hesitation, Chen Chen made a prompt decision and immediately gave the order. Shorty, Big Bird, take 2 people and carry the oil barrel. Go 500 meters north, then set fire in the north-south direction with the 500-meter position as the center. All the oil has been used up to ensure the fastest possible fire. Hearing his words, everyone was subconsciously stunned. But then, everyone immediately felt the madness, boldness, and ingenuity of this plan. How long does it take for a forest fire to start and spread? According to data, in the initial stage, when the fire begins to spread, it takes at least 15 minutes for a small cluster of fire to develop into a flame visible to the naked eye. It takes at least 30 minutes for the flames to develop into an observable fire. But once the fire begins to spread, the progress of the fire becomes unstoppable. In just a few minutes, it can develop into a fire that is big enough to devour any vegetation. With the help of wind, the fire can spread at a speed of more than 10 kilometers per hour, and if it enters the deflagration stage, it can even reach 30 kilometers per hour. Now, they have 2 barrels of oil to support the fire, so the fire can directly skip the initial and development stages and enter the fierce stage. Once the enemy enters, they will be caught in the fire before they have time to react. Once they are caught in the fire, the ground offensive will be completely useless, and everyone will be forced back into the river. This was the captain's plan. He might not intend to achieve any results with the help of fire attack, but he could indeed use this method to build an insurmountable wall on the ground. No one questioned it anymore. Big Bird and Shorty led their men to carry the oil barrels and head north. Just a few minutes later, Chen Chen saw from afar that thick smoke was rising from the depths of the woods. Yang Shu, report the enemy's position, Chen Chen said in a low voice. The enemy has entered the rapids area and is approaching our ambush position. It's about 600 meters from the ambush position. Not accurate. That's enough. It will take them a long time to cover the 600-meter distance. The fire was big enough to kill them on the riverbank. Chen Chen let out a long sigh of relief and issued the last order before the battle. The assault boats will dock, and smoke bombs will be thrown forward to block the direct line of sight of the river. Everyone, prepare for battle and get ready to meet the enemy. Meanwhile, on the other side, Sang Kong, Nuo Kang's trusted general, most capable assistant, and commander of the armed forces, was standing on the deck of the armed freighter, observing the movements ahead with a telescope. His expression was calm, but he was extremely angry in his heart. Miao Ong is his subordinate, whom he brought up and to whom he is as close as a brother. The two of them did dirty and tiring work from the beginning. When it was the most difficult, they only had a gun and a few bullets. They killed several poor people and only got a bite of food. Later, they finally made achievements and followed the right people and finally made their lives a little better. But at this time of success, at this time when there was no limit to their future, Miao Ong died. The death was inexplicable and silent, and the person who killed him is still at large. Therefore, Sang Kong must come in person and he must catch the murderer. It's not just about the ship, and it's not just about the cooperation with the 505th Brigade. He wants revenge. Sang Kong let out a long sigh and put down the telescope in his hand. At this moment, the 4 armed cargo ships had rounded the river bend, and the 2 speedboats ahead had arrived near the helicopter crash site. A report came through the headset that the river in the distance was filled with smoke that was obviously artificially released. The enemy is there. Everyone get ready. Those bastards are just ahead. They only have 1 boat. Don't be afraid. Just charge on. Sang Kong gritted his teeth, turned and walked towards the cabin, preparing to enter the safe house. No matter how angry he was, he would not be so irrational as to take the lead. After all, his life was very valuable. However, the moment he turned around, he suddenly caught a glimpse of smoke from the corner of his eye. RPG! A hoarse roar came from the headphones, and then the adjutant threw him to the ground. Gunshots rang out instantly. Fight back! Fight back! Machine gun fire! Volley! Use the recoilless gun! Where's the mortar? Where's the mortar? Move quickly! Break through the smoke! Find them! Sang Kong rushed into the cabin, and through the cabin glass, he saw a scene that made him frightened. 2 speedboats were smashed. The person on top was shattered into several pieces by the bullets shot out from the smoke. Where are the ground troops? Ground troops, open fire! Sang Kong shouted loudly. However, the reply from the headset made him feel disappointed. We have arrived at the designated location. But I can't get through. It's on fire. What a huge fire. Hit the target. Hit the target. I got it here too. The bow of the armed freighter is damaged, but they're still approaching. It can't be stopped. Without heavy firepower, it can't be sunk. Chen Chen kept hearing calls in his ears. The first round of 40 fire attacks had ended. 4 rockets hit 4 cargo ships, but due to the long distance, the hit range was not accurate. Except for one cargo ship that was damaged below the waterline and stopped leaking, the other 3 rockets hit the upper part of the cargo ship. Although it caused some casualties, the actual effect was extremely limited due to the steel plate reinforcement. Relatively speaking, the biggest losses were suffered by the speedboats. After just a contact, the 2 small boats conducting reconnaissance in front were directly smashed by heavy machine guns and anti-aircraft guns, and the enemies on them fell into the water without a sound. The Dongfeng Corps took the lead, but the problem is it was just a lead. The 3 cargo ships were still approaching, and the speedboat hid behind the armed cargo ship. The opponent's counterattack had begun. Shells kept flying past, recoilless rifles and mortars bombarded in the direction of the smoke, and the big bird that had returned was driving the assault boat back and forth on the river, avoiding the shells falling from the sky. Just as Chen Chen said, water flow is the best cover. If the impact of the mortar shells falling into the water had not been greatly reduced, the Dongfeng Corps would probably have had their ship destroyed and everyone on board dead. However, even so, the current situation is definitely not balanced. The strength of the armed cargo ships used by the other side far exceeded Chen Chen's expectations. After their side lost their explosive weapons, the threat to them had been reduced to the limit. All the Dongfeng Corps could do was to rely on their advantage in vision, continuously firing and killing enemies exposed on the deck in an attempt to deter them. White Dog, shoot down the gunner on the deck first. Yang Shu, shoot from the side and see if there is a chance to decapitate him. Find high-value targets. Don't just focus on beating people up. Chen Chen issued orders one after another. And at the same time, the M82A1 in his hand never stopped shooting. The bullet penetrated the steel plate and hit an enemy who was operating a heavy machine gun. His blood splattered all over the ground, and his body was bent sideways from the waist. It was terrifying and shocking, but the enemy was not scared off. At this time, the cargo ship had entered the edge of the slow-flowing area. Chen Chen hoped that they would hit a reef and run aground, but this time, his luck was bad. This did not happen. After entering the rapids, the speed of the 3 cargo ships began to increase. This is the core area of the ambush. The 2 sides were less than 400 meters apart, and the enemy's firepower was becoming more and more intense. Due to the protection of the steel plate bunker, it is very difficult for our side to cause casualties, but the enemy can take it easy and directly shoot at us. The only weapons that could penetrate the splint were the 23mm anti-aircraft gun, the 85 heavy machine gun, and the M82A1 in his hand. Number 1. Aim at the deck and fire. Clear them first. White Dog, attack ship number 2. Suppress the enemy's firepower. White Dog got it, but I'm running out of bullets. Listening to the voice on the radio, Chen Chen's heart sank suddenly. Armor-piercing weapon bullets are consumed too quickly. If the enemy really rushes in front of us, the assault boat will definitely be blown up and there will be no possibility of survival. Wait, Chen Chen suddenly started to realize that he was trapped in a vicious circle. That's right, I want to save the assault boat and the evidence. But who the hell said that the ship must remain intact and functional? Doesn't an assault boat that is bombed into a pile of wreckage no longer an assault boat? The evidence above has been taken down by myself. As long as it is still here and has not been completely destroyed by Knockcam's people, it is enough to prove everything. Therefore, the core of the problem is not to deliver the assault boats to the 756th Brigade in perfect condition, but to kill all the enemies who come here. Don't let them take the assault boat away. The pass, the assault boat, and the cargo on the assault boat form a chain of evidence that is interconnected and intersected. To prove that the 505th Brigade is indeed trafficking in drugs, all 3 are indispensable. But a rotten assault boat is still an assault boat. Understood. I was really being too stubborn, or perhaps I was making the mistake of being radical, and I actually thought I could take the ship back and use it myself. But in fact, it doesn't have to be so perfect. Chen Chen's thoughts suddenly became clear. At this time, the fire in the jungle was getting more and more intense. Chen Chen decisively ordered. Number 1, White Dog, Big Bird, use up all your bullets and retreat. Drive the boat ashore and run it aground, and blow up the engine. Give up protecting the assault boats. Everyone, make killing the living forces your first priority. After the order was given, all members of the Dongfeng Corps immediately took action. Li Bang pulled the trigger with all his might. The barrel of the gun turned red, and the armor-piercing incendiary bullet tore through the armor of cargo ship number 1. After the bullet swept across the entire deck, it brought up clusters of blood. White Dog's heavy machine gun had used up 200 rounds of bullets. The steel plate in front of the deck of cargo ship number 2 was riddled with holes, and all the enemies who had been hiding behind it had fallen to the ground. Big Bird, turn to shore. Number 1, retreat. The White Dog shouted. At this time, Li Bang had used up his last shell and without hesitation grabbed the gun beside him and rushed to the bow of the ship. The assault boat rushed towards the shore without slowing down at all, and the 3 men jumped into the water under the cover of smoke and quickly climbed behind the shelter on the shore. How do we fight now? The White Dog asked. No more fancy moves, just beat anyone you see. Chen Chen replied calmly. The battle between the 2 sides fell into a brutal tug-of-war. The Dongfeng Corps' positions were extremely scattered, and the opponent's explosives had little effect. As the freighter passed through the rapids, the battle began to evolve in the purest direction. Gun against gun. The distance was less than 150 meters, and any bullet could hit an unlucky person. Chen Chen kept changing his position, and, with the help of a thermal imager, fired deadly bullets at the enemies on the ship. The enemy's heavy machine gun was set up, but before it could open fire, a bullet from behind pierced the shooter's body. Drug dealers are drug dealers after all. They do not have such high combat qualities, let alone such high fighting will. After discovering that looking into the hole will lead to death, they made what they thought was the most correct choice: face shooting. This is definitely not as ridiculous as it appears in the picture. In fact, at a distance of more than 100 meters, when the strategy of overhead shooting is really adopted, the enemy suppression force begins to become so strong that it is somewhat scary. As long as they aimed roughly, the pouring bullets would overwhelm the Dongfeng Corps. Even Chen Chen's position was exposed, forcing him to abandon the M82A1 and move quickly. The first casualty occurred when a machine gunner holding an M240 was hit in the face by a bullet from an unknown ship and fell to the ground. The rifleman in the group noticed the interruption in firepower and immediately stepped forward to take his place. However, this momentary gap in suppressing firepower allowed the enemy to launch a fierce counterattack. Everyone started firing at the same time, and the rifleman who had just taken over the M240 fell to the ground again. 2 people were reduced in an instant. Or, in other words, 20% of the personnel were reduced. The balance between the two sides was about to be broken. But fortunately, at this critical moment, the poplar trees deployed in the rear played a role. His SVD fired again and again, harvesting the lives of high-value targets from the rear time and time again. The shaky balance was suddenly turned back. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Chen Chen finally found his position again. The 416 Hong Kong dollars switched to single-fire mode, and Chen Chen took a deep breath. At this moment, the smoke on the battlefield once again activated his long-standing physical instincts. Compared with the last jungle chase, his feelings were even stronger. The little conch is on the face, with its eyes aimed. This is an advanced aiming technique that is particularly effective when using a collimated sight, such as the conch. It can use the principle of binocular vision overlap for aiming, using one eye to observe the target and the other eye to aim through the sight. The different perspective seen by the two eyes will overlap under the human visual habits, which can not only ensure the speed and accuracy of aiming, but also ensure the perception of the battlefield environment. In fact, when it is used to perfection, this aiming method can make a fixed magnification sight have the effect of a variable magnification sight. Before this, Chen Chen had tried to use this technique to aim and shoot many times, but the body's instinct cannot be trained in a short period of time. Only today, only under the powerful pressure that could have led to his total annihilation, did he suddenly have a breakthrough. A head popped out from the side of the boat. It was just an enemy who was just peeking out to observe. He didn't even have time to open fire. But in this second, Chen Chen, who used both eyes to aim, had locked onto his position. Then, the muzzle was pulled horizontally, the front sight coincided with the head, the trigger was pulled inadvertently, and the bullet flew out of the gun. The enemy fell backwards on the spot, followed by the second and third. Chen Chen felt that he had finally recovered most of his strength and entered a state of high-efficiency combat. Of course, this was not the so-called selfless state in fantasy novels. On the battlefield, if you dare to focus only on shooting, you will definitely die faster than everyone else. So on the contrary, Chen Chen is not selfless but omnipresent. His sensitivity to changes on the battlefield has greatly improved. He knows at a glance what he should do at each moment, how he should move, when he should stop shooting, how he should shoot, and how to pull the trigger. It's as if the enemies in front of you all have enemy identification marks on their heads. It was as if he had turned on auto-aim. In just 3 minutes, Chen Chen's gun had killed 8 more people. Any enemy who dared to approach the heavy machine gun position with a firing range would be shot dead. 3 ships and 4 heavy machine guns facing the Dongfeng Corps' position were all silenced. Under his powerful suppression, all the enemies on the cargo ship fell into panic. How could they fight like this? If they showed their heads, they would die. They didn't even know which direction the bullets were coming from, because every time they shot at the direction where their teammates fell, they would find that there was no one at that position. The gunman was constantly moving and shooting, and each move and shooting took only a few seconds. What a terrifying efficiency. Yes, the opponent is at a comprehensive disadvantage in terms of manpower, but if we continue to fight like this, we may even be slowly bitten to death. At this moment, the enemy's mentality began to show cracks before collapse. They fired blindly searching for the most terrifying enemy. Finally, someone saw Chen Chen. Under the spreading wildfire, his figure was illuminated by the flames. A black silhouette suddenly emerged from behind the tree trunk, followed by a precisely fired bullet. With a thud, the observer fell down. His teammates were heartbroken. There's a ghost in the woods. Anyone who saw that ghost died. Hide quickly. Don't stick your head out. Don't stick your head out. Morale began to collapse. They clearly had the advantage in numbers, an absolute advantage of 70 to 8, but they really didn't dare to fight anymore. Run. Retreat first. Retreat first. Keep your distance. Use cannons. Freighter number 3, which lagged behind, started to reverse first. Sang Kong roared hysterically in the armored command room. He ordered everyone to attack again, but the problem was that no one listened to him. Even his adjutant advised him. Sir, retreat first. Reorganize the attack. We can't beat them at close range. Their shooting skills are too accurate. Some of them have already died. They won't be able to hold on for much longer. Just a few more long-range attacks and we'll win. The fire is too big now. At least wait until it burns out. Sang Kong clenched his fists in anger. He even wanted to rush out and operate the heavy machine gun himself, but he also knew that would only make himself a target. The forest fire has covered the entire area, and the ground troops have long lost contact. It is unknown whether they were unable to escape and were burned to death in the fire, or jumped into the river to survive and were too late to respond. We can only retreat first. Sang Kong gritted his teeth and squeezed out a sentence. Retreat first. Keep an eye on that assault boat. Don't let them get away. Don't worry, it's definitely not open. Laugh. Before the adjutant could finish his words, a strange shriek suddenly resounded throughout the battlefield. Then came the second and third tones. The adjutant turned around in shock, and then saw a scene he could never have imagined. The crashed helicopter had been engulfed by the extremely high-temperature flames of the forest fire, and the ammunition exploded and scattered everywhere. Under the high temperature, the rockets in the rocket nest were flying out one after another. It's like a blooming firework. But this firework blocked the fleet's way to retreat. A rocket passed over the top of ship number 3 and exploded after hitting a tree trunk behind it. And the rest are attacking this cargo ship. Get down! Boom! Ship number 3 was severely damaged, and a fire broke out on ship number 2. Ship number 1, as the shield sailing in the front, was actually riddled with holes due to the suppressing shooting from Li Bang and Bai Go. The crew members on board had already lost more than 50% of their numbers, and with the final explosion, they completely collapsed. Everyone was jumping into the water to escape, but they were still in the rapids area. The rapids area was the deep water area. All those who dived became targets. Don't chase, don't chase. Clear the perimeter first. Count your numbers. How many are left? Form a new combat team. Six people. Surround. Yangshu, retreat. Orders were issued one after another, and the Dongfeng Corps began to enter the rhythm of harvesting. 6 people, harvesting dozens of people. The white dog suddenly felt his mind wavering. As he fired, he murmured, "Is this the power of tactics?" Chen Chen, who was changing the magazine, heard his words and replied casually, "Wrong. That's pure power, kid.